being here. Glad that we can host. We appreciate the support of the legislature for what they do for this campus and for colleges across the entire university system of Georgia. Why do we want to host events like this? Because the College of Coastal Georgia is focused on being a place where you can ask difficult questions safely and have discourse that is civil. And when we talk to students about that, we say it another way. We say civil discourse means that we can have a conversation about something and even disagree, but do that without being disagreeable. And there's a big difference between disagreeing and being disagreeable. And so this is an example of that. It's an opportunity for civil discourse about an important topic and to hear all sides of that topic. And we're glad that the College of Coastal Georgia can host that and have everyone here. Thank you for being here. If there's anything you need, please don't hesitate to reach out. This is a great facility, restrooms across the hall, right behind you. We'll do anything we can to help this be a great day for you. So thank you for being here.
Thanks, President. I also just want to thank your staff. They were here before we walked in. We walked in at 8 o'clock this morning. Everything was set up. Mics were on. It looked good, and they've done a great job getting it ready.
Yeah, I have a great team. I don't take a whole lot of credit for anything that happens here good because it's not my fault. It's their fault. So I got great people. So thank you for that.
They make you look good. Thank you. All right. I want to also thank a few other people real quick. First, Senator Mike Hodges. He could not be here today. He's had eye surgery this week. He wanted to be here and support this group. And so otherwise he'd be here. We'll see him in the future. He did buy us lunch today. We have box lunches for the police officers and staff and the representatives. So thank you, Senator Hodges. I believe he's online as well, watching. Also, Scott McQuaid and Convention Visitors Bureau that helped us out, took the staff and a few of us out to dinner last night. And so we appreciate them supporting the study committee and what the CVB, the Convention Bureau does for the Golden Isles. We have a beautiful place down here, and I'm proud to be part of that community. And also we have Bradley Anderson in our midst and others, and appreciate you being here. He is in running for the representative spot, neighboring county. So again, thanks for everybody being here. We'll get started with the agenda. I'm going to start off with something before I go into the kind of a quick summary from last meeting. One of the things we talked about how Kratom could affect youth. And I think whether you're pro Kratom or what type of Kratom or whether it's pure leaf or not, I think none of us want it to get down to the kids. I haven't heard one person say kids need to be exposed. And one of the things I just want to kind of share real quick is a video of where we're seeing some exposure possibly trying to attract the youth. And then just some pictures as well after that. If I don't have the pictures, I've got some hard copies up here. But if you can play the video first.
Step aside, let me through. Got a tray full of blue. Everybody want to sip of that mood. Mint wellness in my hand and I'm feeling brand new. Woo! Toss a can, watch it fly, see it land. Crowd vibe, now the party got a whole.
So anyway, it's one of those things. That's good enough. Thanks. We'll have to decide whether we, is that attracting youth and young people to Kratom or other things, or is it not? That's one of the things we'll have to look at. So we go to the PowerPoint now. Look at key areas to discuss. This is, yeah, we'll see the pictures real quick. Some sample products too. We saw on the, some still shots of sample products just throughout. And that's some things I've been asked quite a bit by people. What about the advertising, whatever else? We did not address that in the first bill, and that's something we just have to discuss. We'll have to vet it through the study committee. Then after that, decide next year which direction we go in. And this leads into the PowerPoint. As we mentioned, the very first meeting, there's many options we're looking at. One is clearly, everybody talks about it, an all-out ban. One of the things we're also looking at is not a ban, and just I think everybody agrees a 708 is not good. I think everybody agrees to that. And it would be regulating it, whether you put it behind a pharmacy counter, whether you get Department of Revenue, Department of Agriculture to help enforce it. I think the key piece missing, I think everybody agrees, is enforcing right now. It's hard. And it's hard for our local police officers to do that in sheriff's departments. So it's not any shade on them at all. The way the law is set up, we've got to look at it and tweak it. We just have to decide how we want to do that. That's going to be the key. Which direction do we want to go in? What's going to be best for Georgians? What's going to be best to keep the average citizen safe? And I've told the story before about how I met a retired Marine, Fort Stewart area, and he takes kratom. He's got a concoction. He mixes up in his basement. He mixes it well. He knows how to do it, but he doesn't just think his neighbor down the street should be able to buy it from a gas station because they're not sure quite how much to take. Because right now we're having some problems. You've seen some recent news articles and a study by the University of Florida, I think a news article by the Current locally here, where there's mislabeling, where they're going, it meets state guidelines, but yet the strength doesn't match what the label says. And that's dangerous. That's the part of the problem we've got to fix when it's mislabeling like that. And so, and like I said, we've seen that in 2 different cases now. So if you look at, I'm not going to read word for word. If you can go to the next power slide on that. And I won't read word for word. We talked about the potency there, the pediatric exposure we just discussed with the video, the labeling. I think that's one of the key things I've heard from everybody is we've got to get a handle on enforcement of the labeling, because a consumer should be able to expect whatever that label says, that's what's in the product. That's what's inside the bottle or the package or the pill or whatever else that person's taking. You expect that when you buy Tylenol or any other kind of medication. Even though it's not considered a medication, a lot of people use it for that. So we got to make sure those labels are correct. Which way do we go with that? How do we do that? And that's what this study committee is for. Addiction and public health. Today, you'll see a large part of the presentations today will be on addiction and recovery. And then enforcement, that's going to be a key, and we'll talk a little about it today, but a lot of that will be at that last session, October 9th, enforcement in Bremen, Georgia, West Georgia area. They've done a good job of looking at it, and that's kind of going to be the focus there. So next slide. And some of the things we learned, again, I won't read word for word if you look at it there, but not all kratom products are the same. I think we've learned that. We know one leaf's not going to hurt you if you throw in a cup of coffee or something like that. Decision is how many leaves does it take to make it a concentrate? Youth exposure, we've already talked about. Product consistency, that's a key with the labeling. The bodily effects. One of the things too, I was talking to somebody just a minute ago, looking at, we had some outstanding researchers show up last time. And if you missed it, you can go back and watch it on videotape. And it's really important because you really learn a lot about kratom. Yeah, Dr. McCurdy from University of Florida, Dr. Crandall from Emory. They're recommended by the kratom side, people who are associated with the kratom industry to testify. McCurdy's done a lot of research, and he's the one who found out some of the stuff. If I'm not misquoting him, he talked about he liked the natural leaf, but thought it'd need to be under medical professionals' guidance. And that's what I'm hearing from some of the pro-leaf kratom people. Dr. Crandall did a molecular research at Emory, and he kind of said the similar things. Dr. Norton, University of Georgia Pharmacy School, I've worked with him now for 4 years. He's done research on kratom, probably done more research in Georgia on kratom than anybody I know of, and could be wrong about that, but from what I understand, that's what he's recognized for. And he thinks we need to ban it until we can get it safe. He sees a potential good use for it, but he thinks we need to kind of put it aside until we can kind of prove it's safe for everybody, no matter who takes it. Dr. Klodny, of course, and Dr. Filcher from Poison Control. So we had a lot of good researchers, and we had former DEA agent Michael Templeton talk about some of the caveats of importing kratom, which can and can't do. You can't legally import it, but we can if it's classified a different way. So it was a good first session, and I appreciate everybody. Another slide, or we'll kind of get going. You'll see the Florida study here about the mislabeling. We talked about that, and I think we'll cut it off there and get to our testimony now. So first, committee members, if you can introduce yourselves, if you have any questions or any thoughts about the first session. Representative Ridley.
I'm State Representative Jordan Ridley, and I'm just here today to hear more and learn more. And the first session was definitely a lot of information to take in, and I hope today is as well.
I'm Representative Danny Mathis. I represent Middle Georgia. Very informative on the first meeting. I'm looking forward to hearing some more testimony. I believe this is a serious issue that we need to tackle, and I believe we'll come out with the right solutions. Thank you.
John Corbett, District 174, Lowndes, Eccles, Clinch, Ware, Charlton, and Brantley counties. Glad to be here this morning. First meeting, as Danny said, very informative. Look forward to what we can learn today and see how we can hopefully address this issue.
Also, we'll see if we can go online now for Representative Al, Representative Kendrick.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Glad to join. Sorry I can't be there with you guys in person. I'm House District 50, Representative Michelle Au. Definitely got a lot of information the first meeting and a lot of feedback. So I'm excited to hear what the people coming to testify have to say, especially with the public comment.
Good morning, everyone. Bringing greetings from Detroit, Michigan. Sorry I could not be there, but looking forward to attending online and representing House District 95, which is East DeKalb and South Gwinnett.
All right, thank you. And anytime you're out of town, it's really hard to plug into Zoom and really stay engaged. I applaud these two representatives for being far, but yet they'll be engaged throughout as long as they can this morning with their schedules. Okay, first witness coming up. I'd like to call up Cami Wolf-Rice. She'll be participating through Zoom. Representatives will have to watch the screen.
Good morning, and it's a privilege to be here. Representative Townsend, thank you for having me today. Am I coming through? Because I look frozen.
You're on now.
Okay, great. Thank you for having me. My name is Cami Wolf-Rice. I'm the CEO and founder of CWC Alliance. What I prayed for today is in the audience that we don't have any disease of stigma, because when I tell you my family's story, you might think, what is going on? But we have a personal lived story. It's going to be like taking a drink out of a fire hydrant, but I'm going to be very brief and explain what happened. My first story is my eldest son, Christopher. 20 years plus ago, he had a health crisis. He was seriously overprescribed. We went home from the hospital with 90 Oxycontin. It was right when it was released as the wonder drug. And didn't receive any warnings, and it was followed up by more opioids. And this was a kid that wanted to be a Navy SEAL, an AP student, a great, wonderful boy. And it hijacked his life. And I lost him February 26, 2016. So the first thing CWC did was created a new position in hospitals. We are at Grady, Emory, and multiple rural hospitals in Georgia. It's called a life care specialist. The House of Representatives had an opioid committee that I presented to, and one of their mandate to come back recommendations was to have life care specialists throughout the state of Georgia. So that's one lane. And again, CWC is a prevention company. We want to stop it before it starts. Basically look at it as a care coach at patient bedside. If someone has to be on opioids, they're educated of the importance of tapering off quickly. We provide mental wellness coping skills at bedside, and we're there as that coach. It's doing wonderful, amazing. And I could go on and on about that program. Second, we were awarded by the opioid settlement money, GOCAT, $1 million, partnered with Resilient Georgia. We took all that training and put a youth wrapper around it. And we launched, and we've been training across the state of Georgia to youth and adults that service youth. We're teaching them about the dangers of fentanyl. We're teaching them about opioids, how to become health advocates, and mental health advocates for themselves. Our young people are struggling. Now I'm looking at, we had to add 3 new drugs that are 10 times stronger than fentanyl, educating our young people. Now we're talking about kratom in gas stations that they have access to. It's terrifying. I'll just be honest. But let me take it a step further. I have another personal story. So I've lost my oldest son. Won't even tell you how the brutal pain is of losing a child. Then I lost my brother. My brother started doing Kratom, he turned into a different person, a person I didn't know. He was at our home at a family event and was super agitated, angry, yelling, screaming, out of control. And he was normally a calm, mellow person, okay? It was like somebody I'd never even seen before. And we had to put him into rehab for the Kratom to taper him off safely. There might be wonderful things down the road that we see that Kratom can do, but to be selling it in a gas station with no regulation around it is terrifying. It's terrifying. We should be doing clinical trials. We should be doing continued research. And you see how they're marketing our young people. So we do have it in our program at the Youth Prevention Network. We are warning kids, but we can only do so much. We need the state behind us to really study this and understand where it should be. And it shouldn't be next to beef jerky in a gas station. I know that. The third thing that CWC does is we've trained over 3,000 frontliners, nurses, healthcare providers. They don't have training on addiction and pain management. The second thing, we just trained 150 deputy sheriffs down at St. Simon's at a 2-day conference, training them about stigma, prevention, all the things that we're training our youth. So I just wanted to give a clear understanding that prevention isn't about picking one substance to blame. It's about closing every single door, wherever it is, before it leads to a family like mine that's lost 2 family members. We've got to stop it before it starts. And I appreciate and thank you for the time. And I wish I could be there in person. Thank you.
So, well, thank you very much. Committee members, questions? I'll have one. How did you get started? I know you told me the story, but actually organizing the network and convincing the legislators for doing what you did with the counselors. That's pretty amazing.
Well, I'm just going to be honest. I've been given this assignment by God because I don't get paid for what I do. I've taken my pain and put it into purpose. I still have the pain, but I've put it into purpose. So I don't get a paycheck, so I can't get fired, which that's a great thing. But what I will say is the success of CWC has been 100% partnering with everybody. This is too big. The opioid epidemic, the fentanyl crisis, it's killing our children. It's killing people across our state. And the key is partnering with Grady, partnering with Emory, partnering with Mercer University Medical School, Georgia Rural Innovation Center. Could not do my job without the support of the partners that we've received, Resilient Georgia, because we can't work in silos. We have to take what we do and work together and because it's too big, it's too enormous. And that's been the key to our success, is partnering. And that I'm not going to stop. I'm a mom on a mission. My PhD in addiction is an MOM. I've lived it. I have lived experience. And I just want other families not to be burying their children. That's why I do what I do every day.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Thanks again for testifying, and you're free to stay on the Zoom and listen throughout the program, of course. Thank you for participating.
Thank you.
I want to welcome Representative Meeks. Thank you. Thank you. And next we have Kathy Bollinger. If you can step up to the podium, please.
I'm Kathy Bollinger. I come from outside of Stockton, Georgia proper. Not many people know where that's at. It's on the Florida border. I am not a speaker. I'm a grandma. And so you're going to see me read, is what you're going to see. So I'm going to speak to you about a unique trifecta relationship that I have with Kratom. Even though I've never touched it, the first thing you need to know about me is I've suffered from chronic disease all of my life. My prominent symptoms as a child were feeling like I had permanent flu, chronic strep, joint and bone pain to the point to where my knees would swell up and I could hardly walk to school. I had horrible chronic fatigue. I can remember coming home from school crying because kids in my class made fun of me. They told me I had sleepiness disease. I asked my mom, was I going to die from it? It's funny now. The Air Force doctors could not decide what to do with me, so their answer was to put me on antibiotics for a 10-year period. And every month for 10 years, the good Air Force doctors shot me up full of a very potent antibiotic. It seemed to help, and I began to thrive. And when I aged out at 16, my dad retired. I stopped receiving the antibiotics. My health began to go downhill. Looking for a solution to the pain in my teens, I found out what I believed was my answer: drugs. I got married, I had 3 children, and I lived the horrors of drug addiction for the next 14 years. At the age of 30, with 3 children in tow, ages 8, 10, and 1, I ended up in Brother Charlie's rescue mission in the battered wife's house in Tifton, Georgia, via a police car. That was the beginning of my recovery from drugs. I've managed to put together 35 years clean and sober as of this October the 6th. I am very proud of the person that I have become. I was lucky enough for my parents and the rest of my family to be able to see the changes in the better for me now. Today, I have integrity and I have respect. I never thought I would have that from anybody. I began having autoimmune issues again when I got, I guess, around 40 years old. This time as a clean and sober addict, I went looking for something that would help my pain. This was 8 years ago. I ran across something called Kratom. Knowing that I was a recovering addict, I knew I had to study this before I put it in my body. I did, and what I found shocked me. I didn't find it in medical literature. I didn't find it in research. I did not find it in any social media or any type of media. I found it on the message boards of recovering people, of addicts who had used it thinking it was okay to use, and they relapsed. The horrible withdrawal, comparing it to heroin and morphine withdrawal. They thought it was pure and natural. That's what it was marketed as. So learning about that for Kratom made it a big no for me. I will protect my recovery at any cost. This is the hardest part of my trifecta. This is Andrew. Andrew is my grandson. He's 24 years old, and on February the 9th, 2026 at 2:12 p.m., I received a call from my daughter, Carrie. We talked every day, so I reached over, I picked up the phone, and I heard Carrie screaming. When I realized it was her, I asked her what was wrong, and she said, "Andrew is dead, Andrew is dead," over and over, sobbing and crying. I've heard all my life about people who hear horrible noises that sounded like wounded animals. And then I realized that that sound was coming from me. It was Super Bowl Sunday. Andrew went over to a friend's house and helped him put together a grill for his friend's dad. He had worked the next day, so he headed home to have a good night, to call his girlfriend, talk to his best friend, and said he had to get up early for work the next day. He laid down in bed and he died. Carrie got up the next morning, went to work as usual. She heard Andrew come in. She didn't want to wake him. She received a call from his girlfriend later on in the afternoon because Andrew's work had called Lindsay and said that that he did not show for work. She went over and she found his car there, so she went in the house and she found him in the bed. Carrie ran screaming from the doctor's office that she works at without even telling anybody what was going on, just Andrew's dead, screaming and running out the door. And of course, the first thing she did was call Mama. The police came and the only thing that they found in his room was a bottle of 7-OH. They searched his room thoroughly. The detective took the bottle of 7-OH and listed the items found in the room. It also listed a report to the coroner. The coroner came and took Andrew. It took us months, but we received the toxicology report back. The entire report was negative with the exception of a methamphetamine substance that I was told could be from an environmental exposure since it was so minute. His autopsy read that he was a 24-year-old healthy child with organs, liver, lungs, everything, heart, perfect. No alcohol, no pot showed, no benzodiazepines, no opioids. He was not tested for 7-OH, even though the bottle was found in his room and sent to the coroner. The Glenn County coroner sent the autopsy and toxicology back to the GBI lab to be tested for metragynine and 7-OH. We're waiting. What do I want out of this tragedy? Well, number one, if you're going to study overdoses of kratom, you need to make sure that you're doing that you're able to test for metragynine in autopsies. You know, how do you fight this if you don't have any weapons to do it with? Even when the bottle was sitting in his room and it was the only thing found in there, there is no reason in the entire autopsy report that Andrew should have died. Andrew's mom, Carrie, was sitting in the living room that day. This has nothing to do with it, but this is just compounded on it. When her dog of 17 years that we gave Andrew started seizing and died. Carrie lost her entire world that day, her only child. She will never be a grandmother. She comes home from work every day to an empty house. Andrew, when he went to bed the last day of his life, he deserved better. The people in pain that thought that these drugs were the answer, they deserve better. The addicts who struggle and die and go through horrible withdrawal from this drug, they deserve better. The addicts who sit in these rooms now, they deserve better. Babies being born to kratom addicted mothers going through horrible withdrawals, they deserve better. This is not a game. It's not a game about the, oh, well, pot, oh, well, alcohol. We cannot water this down. The only good law is an enforceable law. If you give it to DOA, I've worked with DOA for years and years, and it is so hard for these guys to do their job as it is now. If you give them something that's an enforcement, it's going to be tough on them. So my answer is to all of this, and my main problem with this is we hear about 7-OH and we hear about whole leaf kratom. But what I know as an addict is I started out with one joint. I started out with something that was just a little pot. But the more you use, the saying is, one is too many and 1,000 is never enough. And when you start using this, all kratom is addictive. If you don't believe it, check with the treatment centers. They're getting people every single solitary day. And all kratom is addictive. And the more you do, the more you need. Let me leave you with this one thought. Okay? One thought. My grandson, Andrew Sterling Wood, was not a minuscule statistic. Okay,
Any questions, committee members?
thank you.
I just want to say thank you for your story. Thank you for being here. And we're still sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Jonathan McMillan?
How y'all doing today?
And well, thank you.
I'm coming as a father today. My son, he's addicted to the kratom. I went to the Capitol and testified about how it's affected our family. It's a very serious thing going on in this world. You know, it's hurting people's family. Us as humans are supposed to try to look out for people. That's been what I've been taught all my life. Just since I've spoke up at the Capitol, I spoke with my son about how much he's been taking. He wouldn't never come clear with me. He's taking 3 to 5 vials a day. That's $20 a pop. And he's got 3 children, beautiful children. He's taking away from the children. And that's one thing I've mentioned to him. So, son, I might not can do away with it, but I want to fight where it's harder for you to get. Not for just him, for his family. And just since at the Capitol testifying, I can count probably 5 times he's had seizures. And his mama's just waiting any time just to hear the phone call. You know, come. It isn't fun I'm actually a stepdad, but I'm his dad. It isn't fun watching his mom go through that. So I'm here today. I appreciate y'all taking it serious. I'm sure, you know, if there is some good, put some stipulations on it, you know, and that's what I'm asking for. But I'm completely abandoned. I mean, just like you said, if it's addicted, I mean, it's just like anything. If it's addicted, we're gonna keep doing it until something happens. I just don't want to see no more deaths. And it seems to be more and more and more. Again, just thank you for your opportunity to come and speak today. I just ask that it be banned until you can figure something out where it's treating somebody good. So that's all I have.
Thank you, committee members. Questions? Representative Meeks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here today. It's good to see you. Can you tell us, is there a condition that he is using kratom for that he believes is treating that condition?
So basically his wife told me that he come home one day, he likes to work out and he's used other substances too. So that what I've been reading is that combined just makes it even worse. But it's mainly just for like a backache or, you know, I've been seeing everything I've been reading. It's been people that's been working out or, you know, trying to stay healthy. If they get these pains, you know, it's something to help with the pain.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. In Wells?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman, if you can hear me.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
I want to just make sure that I'm understanding that when we're talking about derivatives of pure kratom and not pure kratom, because I brought this up before, and I want to make sure that when we're talking about kratom, we distinguish between the pure leaf kratom, which is one thing, and then derivatives are things that are adding impurities to it. So what if the gentleman who just gave the last testimony, if you could distinguish, are you talking about the pure leaf kratom or a derivative impurity of the kratom?
It's gonna be what you get from the gas stations, like the vials with the liquid, or the pill form.
Okay, so you don't know if it's the pure leaf
No.
kratom or the
No,
okay.
ma'am. No, ma'am.
Okay. Representative Corbett.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your testimony. And you said these 3 to 5 vials a day that
Yes,
we're
sir.
using, and they're
Yes, sir.
$20 a piece,
$20 a piece is what he told me.
so up to $100 a day.
$100 a day. And we was doing the math. We was sitting in my front in my living room, just trying to figure out what they'll be, you know, but it's, I was telling him the math on it and it's, so I don't know how you can keep going without, you know, your job that you have it and, you know, eventually you're gonna run out of money and then what you gonna do?
That's what I'm.
And he has tried to go to rehabs, but he just keeps checking himself out and according to him, he doesn't have a problem. So, I mean, it's just one of those, you know, you can't force him to go. Until he wants help, he's, you know. I mean, it breaks my heart, but we all know the tough love things is real. So, but I appreciate y'all letting me testify today.
Thank you. Any others? Thank you again. Thanks for coming. Mr. Derek Bradshaw, I believe you had brought somebody with you as well. Thanks for being here.
Good morning. How's everybody doing this morning?
Morning.
I'm not going to sit here and act like I know the difference between pure kratom and a derivative. Matter of fact, I'm not even going to sound like a professional or nothing in that manner or try to compare the two. All I can give you is the things that I've witnessed firsthand, the things that I've seen firsthand, and the experiences that I've watched daily throughout Brantley County, Ware County, Brunswick, all over. I'm a husband. I'm a father of three. First and foremost, for that, I'm a born again believer in Christ. And in that, the Lord has given me opportunity to walk with men through addictions. I've got to be very close to addicts. And if you're sitting here today saying that, well, I'm not an addict, well, if you think about it, every one of us has got an addiction to something. You can fool yourself and say you don't, but we all do. Mine is caffeine. I'll be honest with you. I'm an addict to caffeine. I like caffeine. I like coffee. I like an energy drink. I like those things, right? But the thing that I want to talk about this morning is, in my worldview, as a believer in Christ, I believe that I have an enemy. I believe I have three enemies: Satan, the flesh, and the world. Okay. And the things I want you to see is as we talk about all this, as we talk about all of our testimonies, and I appreciate your testimony and the honesty of your testimony, we're going to find that this that we're talking about is not just an issue, but it's a sin problem. Me being a born again believer, I read the Word of God. I see what's in the Word of God. In Romans 6, it clearly tells us that for the wages of sin is death, but to get to God's eternal life in Christ Jesus. And I truly believe that. For the wages of sin is death. And I want you to hear this. Death. For the wages of sin is death. That's not just the eternal implication, that's a temporary. That's a on this earth right now implication to that verse right there. When Paul writes that letter, it means right then and there that the sin that we commit here on earth is an effect of what today is. And kratom, the derivative, the store-bought, the gas station kind, is a attack from Satan to this world. You think about this. If I have an enemy, how's he going to attack me? Well, he's going to attack me through what Brother Johnson just said, through financials. If I can get hooked on kratom and spend all my money, well, I ain't got no money to be able to raise my kids, be able to contribute to my family, to be able to do anything. If he's going to attack me, he's going to get me so focused and wrapped up in an addiction that I can't do nothing about anything. But the biggest thing I want you to see right here is how is he going to attack America? And it's through our young people. It's getting them so wrapped up in an addiction that we call good, that we call it's okay, that we call whatever we want to put a stipulation on, that they're going to get wrapped up in bondage so quickly at an early age that they're not even going to know what freedom is in life. That I don't care if you make stipulations and do whatever, it don't matter. That they're not going to make it past the age of 24 without either seizing up, dying, going to other drugs, going in and out of rehabs. It don't matter. I mean, so where are you coming from with this? I don't have a speech wrote, and I ain't sitting here trying to sound good and pretty and all that. But I want you to know something, that me growing up in South Georgia in the good old boy system, that we overlook a lot of stuff. We overlook people's ways, and we look over faults and this and that, in which, hey, we all should give grace to each other. But one thing we cannot stand by and do is treat kratom like it's a beer or anything else, or it's a cigarette or a tobacco. And I mean a derivative of it, not pure. I don't know nothing about it pure. If we continue down this road of treating it like it's just something that it's way worse than, it's going to wrap everybody up in it. I have a brother who struggled with it. I've watched him struggle for close to 5 to 6 years on it. And in that struggle, you would say, well, he just needs to get off of it. And I would say, yes, most definitely. But here's the problem, is that when something's legal, you have to drive by it every single day. When you go into the store to get a water, or you go into the store with your little girl to buy her a pack of candy, guess what's there? Kratom, the derivative. It's there. And you say, well, he don't need to do it. Okay, well, how are you supposed to take an addict and tell him not to do something when you dangle it in front of his face? You know, that's a fault on us. That's a fault on me. That's a fault on whoever's over this. Because kratom is not just a regular, whatever you want to call it, opioid, whatever you want to get to it, okay? It is 10 times worse than anything you can get your hands on the street. And we play it down and dumb it down like it's not. And I'm tired of hearing that. I'm tired of seeing that. The biggest concern that I have of if we stop it is if we got enough capacities in detox to hold the people, or if we have enough rehab facilities to be able to support the people. Because in my experience, and I'm not going to get into numbers, I have watched normal, regular people get strung out on this stuff. And you would look at them and you'd say, there's no way at all. There's no way. But I promise you, you may not know nobody right now, but you go home and you do some digging and you do some studying in your family, with your friends, with some of your coworkers, whatever. And I promise you'll find somebody. It's too easy to get your hands on. And once you get your hands on it, it's out of, and I'm going to say this nicely, it's not that people are looking for relief or a drug or anything. It's somebody walking into the gas station thinking that it's something that's legal that we can just try and do. And the next thing you know, you're taking 1,200, 1,500 milligrams a day out of ignorance, not understanding what it is. And you're addicted to it. And once you're addicted to it, the coming off part's so bad that by that time you're just doing it to stay from withdrawing from it. And that's what many people are doing. Is they're not wanting necessarily just to take it anymore, but they're having to do it not to have the withdrawals off of it. That's terrible on our part as human beings. I want you to think about this. Every one of us, according to the word of God, has worth, has value. Why? Because we are made in the image of God. And whether you agree with that or not, I don't care. I'm not trying to press you on anything or nothing like that. But if I believe each and every one of y'all in here have worth, but I need to fight for each and every one of y'all like you have worth and you have value and you have life. But us just kicking the can down the road on this stuff right here is not doing nobody no good at all. Remember, Satan's plan to destroy this place right here does not come from taking out old timers. It's coming from taking out generations of young kids and changing their minds on things, changing their ways on things. And if they can get our kids, and he's got the world. Plain and simple. And if you think that any gas station is just IDing for this stuff, y'all see how big I am. I'm 6'4", 6'5". Where I'm from, if you 6'4", 6'5", you can buy a beer since you was 15, 16 years old. Okay? So if I could buy a beer at that age, don't you think young folks can buy Kratom? Don't you think folks can get their hands on whatever they want to? And I'm not coming against the benefits of what it does for folks. I'm not at all. I'm telling you what I've seen. And since I forgot who called me. I think Brother Rick called me. I have put my brother into detox. He called me last Friday and said, "I'm done. I'm done. I can't do this no more. I don't know what to do." And so I go to his house and I simply tell him, either you can come with me or you can sit here and die, because he's already dead. And you say, "Well, that's hard," but I want you to understand something. He's not contributing to society. He's not contributing to his family. He's not contributing to his daughter, his son. He's not contributing to anything. He is already dead. He just don't know it yet. He's not seized up yet, but he's getting to that point. And so he says, "I'm done," and he comes with me, and he stays with me for about an hour. And he's got to go home. Then what's he do? He gets back on it. He gets back on it, and it buys him time to detox. So he pushed the detox off and pushed the detox off, and by Monday, Damon here takes him to detox. And he's still in there today. And we'll see what tomorrow holds. But it's not something we can play with, and I'm not trying to sound hard or come down on anybody or nothing like that, but it's the real deal. And we got to quit playing with it. And Damon here, you gonna speak for a minute?
I'm Damon Bennett. Brother Derek asked me to come here this morning. I had no idea what we were doing, but I guess I'd be an eyewitness for what's going on. I was an addict and I lived through it and went set free, found the Lord. Everything was going good, and I didn't know what Kratom was. And so I go into a gas station, and these guys are pushing it on people. We had the gas station. They're asking you, "Hey, you want to try? This?" I mean, this is like the old typical drug guy, trying to sell pot to a kid. So I bit into it, tried it. Next thing I know, it's almost like the addiction is 10 times worse than heroin. I mean, it pulls you in just that quick. And he was talking about money. It costs a lot of money to do it too. And the withdrawals are probably 10 times worse than heroin as well. And like Brother Derek was saying, what happens is you get into this routine where you're doing it, and now you're just doing it just to stay out of the withdrawals. And it's costing you that much money, and it's just a revolving door. You just keep on going, just over and over and over again. And in the public wise, there's kids on it, they're buying it. There's nobody carding anybody or asking for an ID or anything like that. They're just selling it right out, just selling it. So and like he was saying, if you took it all away right now, you would have probably half the workforce shut down because they're going to be out for probably 4 or 5 days, 6 days, or if not into a detox program. This stuff's pretty bad. It's I don't think people realize how bad it is, but it is definitely, it's an epidemic. So I think by being here this morning, I'm glad I could say something and say what's really going on. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Smith, thank you for coming. As a recovering addict, when you go into a gas station and hear this stuff in full display, I mean, how does that affect you? I mean,
Well, you know, you already try to be careful what stores you go to because of the lights, you know, showing all this right here. And you already got alcohol to which is not as bad because it's all, I guess, socially accepted. But I mean, it's like a light going, hey, try this. And then you got the guy going, hey, try this, you know, I'll give you a good deal on it. It's cheap. And then the next day you go in there and it's twice as much, you know, but you got to have it because you just don't want to go into withdrawals. And I'm talking, you do it for 3 or 4 days. Now you're battling with the withdrawals just that quick. So.
Anyone else online? Okay, thank you. Thank you both for being here. Okay, we've had one change of plans with the agenda. We've added one more. I left her off. That was my fault. So Susan Cave, if you can step up to the podium, please. I believe you're coming from Blairsville. I apologize for leaving you off the agenda. Cave, C-A-V-E.
Yes,
C-A-V-E.
thank you, members of the Blue Ribbon Committee. My name is Susan Cave, and I drove today from beautiful Blairsville, Georgia, to speak with you. Thank you for discussing and learning about the very real dangers of raw leaf kratom in the state of Georgia. Thank you for listening to a mother like me who has sustained significant loss and much suffering. And if you would like to say I'm weaponizing my grief in hopes that maybe someone will listen and consider my testimony when deciding our future laws that govern kratom, then so be it. I don't know anything about lawmaking. I just want to tell my son's story, share my truth and what I've learned about kratom since William's death. I just want you to make the right decisions for the people of Georgia because this is about people's lives. Please do not be fooled by the testimonies you will hear from pro-kratom community and kratom lobbyists who actually write the laws that govern its own multi-billion-dollar industry. Please consider the credibility and credentials of the people testifying before you today. The kratom industry wants lawmakers to think 7-OH is the culprit and that 7-OH is just made up completely of chemicals. That's not true. The most abundant opioid found in kratom is mitragynine. And an interesting fact about mitragynine is that once it's consumed, it's converted into the liver into 7-OH. The second most abundant opioid found in kratom is 7-OH. 7-OH occurs naturally in the kratom leaf after it's cured. Not only is 7-OH present in kratom, the kratom leaf, but it's converted into the liver into pseudoindoxil. So please don't be confused when people try to convince you that raw kratom is harmless and completely different from substances like 7-OH, pseudoindoxil, MGM-15, and MGM-16. The entire kratom leaf needs to be banned because kratom is the source and only source for these dangerous semi-synthetic derivatives. Understanding that kratom is an opioid is explained by why some patients who are getting addicted to kratom are winding up on medicines like Suboxone and Methadone, the same exact medicines that's used for treating addiction to heroin, oxycodone, and fentanyl. Understanding that kratom is an opioid helps explain why doctors are seeing an increase in neonatal opioid withdrawal syndrome in infants born to mothers who use kratom during their pregnancy, and more often than not, mothers who thought kratom was a natural non-opioid is promoted by the kratom industry. Kratom is unquestionably an opioid. It produces addiction, it produces withdrawal, people overdose on it, and sometimes people die from it. At the last committee meeting, you heard from Special DEA Agent Mike Templeton, who explained to you that every gram of kratom coming into the United States gets in through either by luck or by fraud. Please don't forget his words. I've learned that the kratom plant and products made from kratom are extremely variable in their makeup. Every leaf is different depending on where it's grown overseas, the environmental growing conditions, how it's harvested, how long it's cured, how long it's allowed to ferment, and the manufacturer's processing technique. For many people who become addicted to opioids, their opioid addiction begins with kratom. That's because kratom's an opioid. The pro-kratom people have argued that kratom is potentially helping the opioid crisis. I beg to differ. I believe that kratom is actually making the opioid crisis worse. The kratom industry likes to harp over and over again on the fact that many of the deaths involving kratom are polydrug deaths, which is true. But they're pushing and spinning that message because they want policymakers to think that kratom is safe. It's just that there are so-called drug users and abusers out there who are misusing their wonderful product. A polysubstance death should not deflect from the fact that people are becoming addicted and dying from kratom. The kratom industry also likes to blame the consumer for irresponsible use. I'd like to pose this question to the committee. How can someone be a responsible kratom consumer if so little is known about how to consume kratom safely? And please look at the studies the scientists who are working for the kratom industry like to show and tout over and over again. These are studies that were performed on mice and rats. And why is that important? Well, mice and rats also convert mitragynine to 7-OH. Their livers do that too, but much less efficiently than a human liver. So, for example, in a study, you give mitragynine to a mouse or rat, there's very little conversion of mitragynine into 7-OH, whereas in humans, a substantial portion of the mitragynine is converted into 7-OH. So when the pro-kratom people present to you studies that say support low risk of addiction, low risk of death, or respiratory depression, they're looking at studies done in animals that don't produce as much 7-OH as humans do. And let me say this about the single ascending dose clinical study, which is often touted by industry advocates. This was an early phase pharmacological experiment, not a safety study. The study was not intended to determine long-term safety or evaluate real-world use patterns. Now let me talk about Georgia. The state of Georgia is a state that went the regulation route. Georgia has one of the more strict versions of the Kratom Consumer Protection Act, which of course limits the amount of 7-OH a product can have in it, keeping the kratom behind the counter. But despite these strict regulations, Georgia is #1 in the country for kratom overdose deaths and #2 when you factor in per capita. Recently, a group of researchers compared states where kratom is completely unregulated to states where kratom is regulated through a KCPA, to states where it was completely banned. And what they found was it was only in the states that had banned kratom where there were substantially fewer deaths. Now, this comes from Georgia's Poison Control Center, and these statistics were put out in May of this year, March or May. And since 2021, Georgia's had 543 cases of kratom exposure deaths called into the Poison Control Center. That's a 66% increase between 2022 and 2025 alone. There's also been a significant increase of exposure to kratom among children in Georgia. Georgia's had a 400% increase from 2024 to 2025 in exposures to kids 5 and under. 76% of kratom exposures in Georgia require management at a healthcare facility. I've learned that all 4 branches of the U.S. military and Coast Guard have banned kratom. Kratom does not have a safety profile or standardized dosing. Labels and age restrictions do not change kratom's pharmacology. States that have passed regulation laws continue to see kratom-involved deaths. Kratom alone causes deaths. That's proven by toxicology reports and medical examiners' reports. It's a known fact that kratom manufacturers, retailers, users, advocates say kratom is a do-it-yourself remedy for everything from pain, cough, and depression to diarrhea and addiction. Kratom is marketed as a drug and it's bought as a drug, even though the FDA plainly states kratom is not lawfully marketed in the U.S. as a drug product, a dietary supplement, or a food additive in conventional foods. I've learned about online forums that are right now full of stories of people who have become addicted to something they thought was going to help them. There are websites like Grow Kratom that actually warns customers to not use their product if they're going to be subject to any form of drug testing. I believe that regulations cannot keep pace with the multi-billion-dollar kratom industry. I believe that bad actors will always look to enter a market, find a product they can exploit, recreate it, synthesize it to become a product more addictive than deadly than ever before. Right now on social media, you can easily find links and websites with people given step-by-step instructions on how to make 7-OH from raw kratom. Any regulation, no matter how strongly written, cannot stop the industry's manipulation of alkaloids, cannot stop overdoses, and cannot prevent more families from suffering the loss mine has endured. While testimonies from kratom advocates and consumers tell how, thanks to kratom, they're now able to be productive members of society, or how they can no longer depend on street or prescription drugs, or how they can function well enough to enjoy their grandchildren and just life in general. My son, William, died at age 32 as a result of consuming raw kratom, not a 7-OH. Any Kratom Consumer Protection Act gives a false sense of security to the consumer. Allowing the availability of kratom keeps the marketplace door open for consumers to purchase future and new psychoactive substances. It's truly tragic to know that something so readily available can create so much misery and heartbreak. A ban or scheduling is the only effective way to prevent these products from reaching the public. Now, I've just got about one more minute. I want to, I sort of saved this for last because I'm going to be speaking about my son and I don't want to get choked up. I just want to get through this. So my 32-year-old son, William Cave, died while wade fishing at St. Mark's Lighthouse in Wakulla County, Florida on the 20th of April of 2024. Witnesses who were fishing in a small boat close to shore saw William fall face forward and not get up. There was no struggle. He did not attempt to get up. And by the time they got to him and pulled him to shore, he was gone. William was wearing a GoPro camera, which recorded his death. When William's toxicology and medical examiner's report came back, it showed Will had accidentally drowned, and the only contributing cause was metragedine toxicity. My son did not use illicit drugs, drink alcohol, or anything like that. He was physically healthy. He took kratom to supplement his prescribed antidepressant medicines in hope of feeling better. He thought it was safe because it's marketed as safe. Since his death, I've been on a mission to advocate for change by educating lawmakers at the state and local levels of government, by providing support for other families who've lost loved ones from kratom, and by reaching the public through news and social media outlets. I'm supported in my advocacy work by Kratom Danger Awareness, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to support, change, education, and awareness. And I humbly thank you for letting me testify today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cave. Questions from the panel? Committee? Online, any questions? Okay, thank you again for being here. Okay, next we're going to change the focus to healthcare community support. Becky Chambers, if you can introduce Curtis Cooper, who's the CEO of the Cooper Health Center.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. We are pleased and appreciate the opportunity to present to you today. I am Becky Riles, representing community health centers throughout Georgia. Community health centers are nonprofit, private organizations who serve patients who are underserved and otherwise have difficulty finding access to care. Community health centers are also known as FQHCs because they receive federal grant dollars to provide health care, primary care, preventive care to individuals who are uninsured and or underinsured. So our purpose today, Mr. Chairman, is to share with you what one health center in Georgia, Curtis V. Cooper, based in Savannah, has seen in terms of kratom in children, adults, and all in between. One of the services that health centers provide are school-based health center services. So they are on the front line serving students who need primary care in the school in order to keep them in their seats and learning. But it is something that what that means is they also see other things besides just the basic primary care needs. Health centers are located throughout Georgia. There are 35 organizations like Curtis V. Cooper, and they are in 331 clinical sites. I was recently in North Georgia with some of you. And prior to that, we had a meeting over near Blairsville, ma'am, and met with the Superior Court judge and others who were working in the space of addiction and intervention, and they provide medical assisted treatment. And what they see in the drug courts and accountability courts is kratom is creeping in because it is one of those substances that they're not supposed to use if they're in an accountability court, right? It is something that we're seeing all over the state. It's not an urban issue. It's not a rural issue. It's a Georgia issue. And we want to do what we can as primary care providers to help individuals find healthy solutions for their health care needs. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Albert Grandy. Albert is the CEO of Curtis V. Cooper Primary Care in Savannah and also serving rural communities in Pembroke and Effingham County. So with that, Mr. Grandy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and the study committee. As Ms. Rouse has said, that I'm the CEO of Curtis Cooper. Just gave you a little background because we got 35 health centers. So you seen one, you see one. So we had 33,000 patients. We had 110,000 visits last year. So we do everything from prenatal to geriatric medicine, we do pharmacy, x-ray lab, dental, behavior health. We do work at the detention center. We're in 34 Chatham County schools. Currently we're in 3 in Effingham, get ready going to all 17. Basically, we have a relationship with Effingham Hospital. And I know we have a relationship with Chairman Burns in terms of providing behavioral health to Effingham County because they didn't have any there. So what we have seen relative to behavioral health when it started is that most of the people were dealing with schizophrenia and ADHD. Then now we have more substance abuse when you put it on top of that. And then you see kratom from that standpoint. So we see, based on screenings, probably 1,000 people that use it. And obviously you got the kids using it from the high school. For the kids, they use it for pain. I know my son played football at DC. So I asked him about what's this kratom stuff, since I really don't know all about it unless you're into that. He said a lot of people can just go to the store, wherever they go, here and everywhere else, and access it. So it's an access issue that I see in terms of not being controlled enough and don't have the right individuals overseeing that type of substance in terms of being regulated. Currently, we have 7 psychiatric nurse practitioners. So psychiatric nurse practitioners, what they do, they just take care of medication management. So you can see that it went from taking care of just the individual for primary care to managing medication. So we're going to the wrong direction, especially substance of this nature that's not really regulated. You can get it from everywhere. So it's going to be eventually being into the neighborhood because we go to the boys and girls. So you ask the question, we go to the football, we go to churches, we go to community events like most of the people. And I know, like Mr. Bradshaw said, it's the kids. It's the kids that getting it and coming up. It's the youth, because people like me, I didn't even know what it was because I was going to use it, but all the kids know everything about it. So it's the access. The more access they have, they can have a whole distribution stream because somebody else can get it for them. And I heard all the other testimonies of the individuals that once get into that community or that area, it's hard to get it out. And also we deal with people for re-entry coming from the institution, detention, because they come out, they get access, they go back in. That's another overall burden to the community, would I say, and impact to families.
Thank you. Questions? Appreciate what you do for the communities, and I didn't realize you serve 5,000 patients across the state. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, especially we just went into Effingham and making that impact. Just a note from Effingham, they don't have any prenatal services, so you have individuals from there. So people in pain, we had people vaping in the room, and the providers after having stopped them, we found out that it's kratom. So you have that unfortunate incidents there because individuals have access and they spend their money for whatever they believe is pain, because other people are telling them to take care of some pain, whatever that pain is.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, committee.
Okay. Next, we'll have Kayla Peterman. She's Executive Director of Grace House of Brunswick. Do you know if we have her online? If not, okay. If she's able to check in, we'll get her a little bit. Next, we'll have Amber Young, Glenn County Drug Court. She's coming. She had another meeting this morning, and I told her I'd work her in when she got here, and so she should be here shortly. We'll just go next. We'll go next to policy advocacy and industry perspective. Mr. Jerry Keeney, if you can, he's coming in. He stepped out for a second, I think. Mr. Haddow, would you like us to take a break, or do you want to go next? Do you want to wait till Jerry comes back?
You.
Oh, go ahead, Ms. Riles. I'm sorry.
Thank you,
Keep going.
Chairman Townsend. I wanted to just add a footnote to our comments made about community health centers. The 33,000 patients that Albert Grandy mentioned, that's for Curtis V. Cooper alone. Statewide, community health centers last year served nearly 800,000 patients across Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Keene, we've had Amber Young's running late. She had another meeting this morning, so I'm going to put you on. He is here for Congressman Jack Kingston, who could not make it. I believe he was out of the country, but thank you for being here. Appreciate your work and your service to the Going Isles. He's a former majority leader in the House.
Good. Thank you.
Representing us on St. Simons and Brooklyn.
Yes, the good House District 179.
Yes, sir.
Representative Townsend now occupies. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Appreciate it. Congressman Kingston wanted me to pass along his regrets. He's in Europe on a project, thought he'd make it back and did not make it back. In your folder, you should have a letter for him. I highly encourage you to read it. It only takes a few minutes. I just want to point out one or two things at the bottom of the page. What Congressman Kingston said. The FDA is specifically targeting 7-OH, a concentrated byproduct of the kratom plant. It is not focused on natural kratom leaf products. Page 2. FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty McCary reinforced that decision, saying we're not targeting the kratom leaf or ground up kratom. We are targeting a concentrated synthetic byproduct that is an opioid. And then HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy, all this is within the last 6 to 8 months, said the same thing. We're taking action on 7-OH as a critical step in the fight against opioid addiction. This is the 7-OH, the synthetics, the things that we're all working. We hope we can work together to get these banned. The FDA is going to schedule them at the federal level. They'll be banned nationally then, which we obviously support. And we just encourage this committee to look at not only supporting that action, but also working toward proper enforcement of the laws we have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Questions? Online? Okay. Thank you. Mr. Haddow. And Mac Haddow is a Senior Fellow of Public Policy, American Kratom Association.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Mac Haddow, Senior Fellow in Public Policy with the American Kratom Association. I thank you for this opportunity to speak to this committee today. The American Kratom Association is a consumer-based organization. We advocate for more than 24 million people across America who use kratom responsibly and safely. Also for the hundreds of thousands here in Georgia that do as well. As you just heard from through Jerry Keene, Jack Kingston say 70H is the problem here. The focus of the federal government enforcement actions today, after extensive scientific reviews, is that natural kratom leaf is not the focus, it is 70H. And that's important, an important distinction that needs to be made. An advocate was writing an email on a Gmail program, and I've got a screenshot I'll be glad to share with you, talking about 70H when the Google program advised her that she should replace 70H with kratom. That is the problem that we're facing here, because it is too easy for people to think that they are taking natural kratom leaf products when they're actually taking 7-hydroxymetrogeny, which is a chemically manipulated and deliberately engineered opioid, masquerading as kratom, introduced into the marketplace as a kratom product. They misled millions of consumers into believing that they were purchasing a natural kratom leaf product. It is simply not true. And when you look at the federal websites, and I agree that they can be confusing, because when you talk about a drug, then obviously there is no approved drug therapy in the United States for the use of natural kratom leaf, or 7-OH for that matter, and therefore it is not an approved drug. We understand that, appreciate it. An important distinction is that under the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, dietary supplements and botanicals are in a separate category. They do not require clinical trials to prove safety, but there is a requirement that every manufacturer has a duty prior to market entry to demonstrate the safety of their products under the conditions of use, meaning labeling. And that is where kratom is regulated today. You heard that from Bob Durkin in your last hearing, a former deputy director of the Office of Dietary Supplements. For those that suggest that kratom is unregulated, it is not true. It is regulated. Now, can kratom products be regulated better? Yes. The American Kratom Association recognized in 2019, when we started promoting our Kratom Consumer Protection Acts, one of the first states in the country was Georgia. We recognized two important safety considerations. One is the product should not contain more than 2% of the overall fraction of the alkaloids in the product being 7-OH. That was before the 7-OH people actually concocted their dangerous opioids. We knew it was a concern. Secondly, we knew that highly concentrated extract products using industrial grade solvents posed a threat to the American public. When you hear about death events, they're not caused by natural kratom leaf products. They're caused by these manufacturers who deliberately try to spike the potency of their products, and they create dangers to the public. It is critically important that policymakers understand and comprehend in their legislation those kinds of problems. FDA, the National Institutes on Drug Abuse, and HHS today report on their websites that kratom deaths are rare. When they do occur, they are because of adulterated kratom products or polydrug use, and sometimes underlying health conditions. I know that there's a concern about how you buy these products. I went out this morning, local store, a gas station, and I bought Monster. Okay, I purchased it. I could walk in and buy it. Now, no one's going to mistake me for being under 21, so they didn't card me. I don't think this is a cardable product in the state of Georgia. And yet today in USA Today, and you can look at it, you have the doctors want energy drink deal paused with the Big 12 and the NCAA. Why? Because it poses an emerging threat because of the high caffeine content of that product to children. And they don't want the NCAA advocating for it through their promotional deals with the Monster energy drink products. I then went to a convenience store and I purchased Imodium. This is for anti-diarrheal. If you look at the data from CDC, you will find that Imodium had 12,987 reported adverse events through the CDC and the poison control centers. Kids buy this to get high. This is what it'll do to it. There are deaths associated with Imodium. I purchased this in a convenience store right down the street. Then I went to CDC. This is a 21 and under product. It is Benadryl, right? It was, and I don't mean disrespect. I see she left, Miss Cave. Her grief is real. We should treat every death, every parent who feels the grief, we should respect and honor those. But she brought it up. Her son on the autopsy report had a high concentration of Benadryl. Benadryl is a sedative, but when we abuse it, it creates real problems for people. And if you look at the data on Benadryl, you will find that there were 9,645 deaths reported from that product that I bought at CVC. I did not need pharmacists to intervene. No, it was not behind the pharmacist counter. It was available to me right on the counter. So perspective is extremely important when we look at these problems. And how do we appropriately recognize this? You do not have a witness from CDC invited to come to these hearings that could tell you about these kinds of problems. You do not have a witness from the NCAA to account for why they're doing promotional deals with monster drinks. You don't have a witness from the addiction recovery programs talking about these products, the abuse of these products by the constituents that they treat and the addiction problems that come from it. No witnesses were invited for that purpose, and yet again, for youth exposure. And Mr. Chairman, you need to consider that because it hasn't happened yet. With respect to Georgia consumers, in the last hearing, there were more than 24 who were there, signed up. They wanted to speak. They were pro-kratom. They didn't because the agenda was so stacked that they didn't have time. Understood that. They weren't invited to this hearing. The names were recorded. They registered. And the chairman chose not to invite them to come and speak. Yet he invited people that he identified as anti-kratom to speak, gave speaking slots. I respect that. Every voice should be heard. But we didn't get to hear from the pro-kratom people. And in my opinion, Mr. Chairman, respect, it's an abuse of your authority as chair to not at least balance the presentation, because each of these members of this committee and the legislature that will read the report from it deserves to have both sides. No invitation was made. Now, it's a long drive, but we accommodate Zoom meetings, right? People can Zoom in. We saw that last time when the chairman invited other people to testify. There is no ability for remote testimony in this hearing, unfortunately. Chairman Townsend told me in the hallway that the thing about the AKA is that you are industry funded. We do accept, this was over at the Capitol, we do accept funding from industry representatives who are willing to accept regulation. The vast majority of the kratom manufacturers in America and none of the 7OH people are willing to accept the regulation that we propose. That's a problem. And yet we're industry funded. And yet each one of the groups that you're going to hear from today, for example, End Kratom Addiction, is funded by the Addiction Recovery Centers. They just got a $50,000 grant that they highlighted on their LinkedIn page. Other groups are funded by the Addiction Recovery Center. So why is that important? Because the Addiction Recovery Centers know that kratom poses a threat to their profit streams. And if you look at the announcement that was made on June 1st of 2026, this year, by the National Institutes on Health, they are going to study an investigational new drug application for purified metrogeny, the principal alkaloid in the kratom, for opioid use disorder. Now, two things are important about that. It validates the fact that people have reported that kratom is helping them get off of opioids. It's not the problem. They're helping them. Purified metrogeny, not 7OH, right? Responsibly manufactured products. The second thing is, in order to qualify for an investigational new drug application, you have to pass an institutional review board, which is constituted of experts to evaluate whether you can safely consume the product. Purified metrogeny, not even the stuff you buy in naturally products, which is a much lower concentration. And that IRB determined it was safe. You would not put the subjects at unreasonable risk. And criticized what the FDA's dose finding study said. Read it. Dr. McCurdy explained it in the last hearing. This was a safety study designed to see whether or not they could then move to a human abuse potential study, which they did. And now that study is ongoing at Baylor University. This idea, Mr. Chairman, respectfully demonizing all of the kratom consumption and ignoring those people and not inviting people that should be invited here. We listened to more than 20 minutes from the chairman's friend, Mr. Breedlove, who is from an addiction recovery center group. Shatterproof is here, funded by the addiction recovery groups, and kratom addiction I've already mentioned. Mr. Templeton, who was a witness, is an expert witness and gets funded by trial lawyers. And yet industry funds us, and somehow we're not credible as you go along the way. The critical factor we all have faced here is exactly what the risk is of kratom use and all of that. The FDA has a FAERS database. It's called the Adverse Event Reporting System. Every death and every adverse event is reported to the FDA. They then evaluate to look for clusters of adverse events or deaths that are attributable to a substance, kratom. They look for correlations between the interactions between kratom and other drugs. And their responsibility is, and they do it, by the way, they issue black box warnings when they demonstrate a safety profile for a prescription manufacturer to say, do not prescribe this particular drug if your patient is using kratom. They can require black box warnings on. They haven't done so. They've studied it, evaluated. Go to the FDA and kratom webpage and go to the FDA and 7OH webpage and look at the scientific evidence that the FDA has generated, which contradicts, Mr. Chairman, your thesis that kratom should be banned. Naturally, kratom is not the focus of the FDA, not the focus of HHS, not the focus of DEA, and yet, Mr. Chairman, respectfully, that has been your crusade over the last 3 legislative sessions to ban kratom. And we don't hear this other point of view. And this committee, where you have determined where all the witnesses are, all virtually are overwhelmed with anti-kratom advocates, and you don't listen to the other side. You did not extend an invitation, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah,
Dr.
Mr. Haddow,
Eustace-
Mr. Haddow, thank you. You can keep tirading if you want, but right now you've kind of repeated yourself. So if you'd like to finish your comments, I'd be glad to ask you a couple of questions, and the committee would too. Would you like to finish any other comment?
We would.
Please go ahead.
And your characterization of my being on a tirade, I did not hear you say of your friend, Mr. Breedlove, when he went on a rant. You didn't say, call his a tirade. You applauded it. Frankly, Mr. Chairman, I think that's offensive, but I'll conclude.
Thank you, Mr. Haddow.
You did not invite Dr. Marilyn Eustace, who testified during the legislative hearing, who is an world-renowned forensic toxicologist who explained the issues about tox reports. You did not invite to this hearing Dr. Jack Henningfield, who a former NIDA scientist who's done kratom research across the board. You didn't invite Laura Romney of the International Plant and Herbal Alliance, who's a kratom advocate, Dr. Heidi Sikora. No invitations were extended to them. And I'll conclude with this: enforcement. Enforcement is important. Georgia's enforcement is terrible. We agree. We advocated to include in the bill, which, Mr. Chairman, respectfully, you rejected, that there should be, for each kratom product placed into commerce in Georgia, the manufacturer had to provide a certificate of analysis from an independent firm, lab, documenting that that product was compliant with Georgia law. We required and advocated for labeling that's consistent with FDA requirements for dietary supplements and botanical supplements. We wanted to add money to have a web page so every retailer would know what the approved products were and that every consumer could go on and see what they were. You rejected that, Mr. Chairman. We wanted to provide the money through a tax, an excise tax on kratom products to fund enforcement. And Mr. Chairman, you rejected it. So I'll conclude with this final thing. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, if I could.
What's that?
We are filing a complaint with the speaker, which I'll give you each of them a copy of, because of the unfairness of how this has come. We do this with great regret. We want there to be a fair hearing because these members of this committee and the entire legislature should see a balanced perspective. This has been unfair. It's been biased. It's been completely for those kratom consumers who wanted to speak and couldn't, you didn't invite. We think that that's unfair. So with respect, I'll circulate to all the committee members. I'll hand up the complaint, but we're planning on filing with the speaker today. Thank you very much. I'm glad to take any questions.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Hadow. And just a couple of remarks and committee bills, the roster, they've given suggested names. I've had lobbyists such as your lobbyist from the AKA. I have other lobbyists that represent Kratom that got witnesses on the last agenda as well, the researchers, as you know. So I'll disagree with you on that part.
Mr. Chairman,
And then
those are
couple
not our
que-
researchers.
Mr.
These are people that are
Excuse me.
funded by the federal government.
Mr. Hadow. And then a couple of questions too regarding the earlier video you saw. How does that, I know that's one of the AKA companies, does that represent how you feel about, is that targeting youth? Was that not a targeting video or how was that? I'm asking about the
Targeting youth.
video, Mr. Hadow.
Yes, with the American Kratom Association, as you know, Mr. Chairman, which you've ignored, we've advocated for more regulations on the advertising and product formulations. I don't like some of those products, but take a look. What you didn't show, Mr. Chairman, you have the pictures of the 7OH products which appeal to children, dozens of them. You won't show those because again, you want this to be
I
about
think
natural
this is
kratom.
where we've talked before. We have an agreement about 708s, that's for sure.
But you won't show
also,
those products
Mr.
that are
Hadow.
appealing to children.
The meeting at special
Yes.
session, some of those packagings.
Yes.
Okay, let's move on.
Yes.
I mean,
We're gonna move.
talking about the exposure of kratom to young adults.
I agree.
Okay, let's focus on that. We've seen the packaging that you have talked about. It was in the meeting in a lab. So let's focus on what we're talking about here. And not-
Amen.
You're continuing to attack the chairman. Let's talk
Amen.
about the exposure of kratom. You can deal with your opinion of the chairman at some of the point, but we're here to talk about the subject matter. And yet you've yet to say a whole lot about it. So let's focus on this and you can take up the other issues at some other time.
Representative Meeks,
Thank you.
respectfully, I understand.
Mr.
So
Hadow.
I was going to answer, I was going to Representative Meeks if I could. I know you don't want me to speak.
Okay. Mr. Hadow, you're allowed. to
Representative
speak.
Meeks, I agree with you. Now, I submitted a PowerPoint and I will submit additional information that documents the science. We believe in the science. We think science should dictate public policy. We have advocated for that. We encouraged the chairman to allow some respected scientists funded over $100 million in NIDA funding went to the university. Well, most of that went to the University of Florida. They're engaged in this new study. We want science to dictate this, but we're not getting the voices aren't being heard. That's the only reason that we think this is unfair. That's all. We want you to have all this information as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hadow. That's where we agree to disagree on that point about the voices being heard. I believe they have been heard and they'll be heard in the future. So anyway, appreciate your testimony. If you do look at, if we have other questions, but one of the things I do want to ask you too, besides that is we keep going around two other topics. One, last time I checked, I'm quoting FDA now, consistent with FDA's practice with unapproved substances until the agency scientists can evaluate the safety effectiveness of kratom or components in the treatment of any medical conditions. FDA will continue to warn the public against the use of kratom for medical treatment. The agency will also continue to monitor emerging data trends to better understand the substance and its components. Kratom is not appropriate for use as a dietary supplement. I think we've heard that name quite a bit today. FDA has concluded from available information, including scientific data, that kratom is a new dietary ingredient for which there is inadequate information to provide reasonable assurance that such ingredient does not present a significant or an unreasonable risk of illness or injury, and therefore dietary supplements that are contain kratom are adulterated under section 402F ... So anyway, that's in response to a little bit earlier. So there is a concern about that if some marketers are trying to say they're a dietary supplement or a food product. In the same way,
Can I answer that?
supporting, you mentioned it earlier in the presentation, so
I
I'm
just-
just responding
I
to
want,
what you said.
no, but I want to clarify
Last-
what you said because it's incorrect.
Where we have additional questions. Questions regarding getting into the country legally. I know there's red flags from customs. We've heard that testimony before. We've seen it in here, got documentation of it. And so that's a, like I said, multi-billion-dollar business. And we just want to make sure we keep things safe for Georgians. Do it the right way. Make sure it's labeled correctly. If it's regulated, we regulate it, enforce it. And that's what we're looking at now. So I do appreciate your testimony and,
Can I respond, Mr. Chairman? I can respond to the FDA issue about dietary ingredients and supplements. I can respond to the import alert.
well, I was
Like I
responding to
had to.
I was responding to your earlier comments.
Well, no,
Got the-
I didn't
got
say
the
anything
information
about
in front
import
of
alerts, Mr. Chairman, respectfully, and I can answer
I'm
the
asking
FDA
other
issue.
committee members at this time. If they have
You're not
other
going to let me
questions.
answer that.
I have a question.
Representative Corbett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not sure I've ever seen a situation just like this where somebody's attacking the integrity of the chairman of the committee. So not sure that's a good strategy, but back to what we're talking about, we talked about it being regulated, Kratom being, highly regulated, but the enforcement part of it is not happening. How do we do the enforcement? What, in your opinion, to address the enforcement issue, what do we do?
So thank you for the question. What we recommend is that, as I mentioned, every product's registered with an independent lab certified certificate of analysis compliant with the product, that you have a web page that's published by the state showing every compliant product. So a retailer knows that if they're selling a product that's not on that list, that they're going to be subject to penalties and fines. They should be. And it allows every consumer to know what the products are. So we think that's important, and fund the actual enforcement inspectors so that you can go out to the stores. And in the last hearing in the Senate, when we talked about enforcement, Senator Glass, I think it was, had asked the chairman, what is the enforcement mechanism? And he couldn't answer. And it was Matt Weatherington who came to the table with him and whispered, it's local law enforcement. They can't do it.
They're not doing it.
They're not in, they can't. How could they possibly know?
And if we don't enforce, it no matter what law we
Right.
pass.
I agree. I agree.
And that's why in October, we're getting fiscal notes from Department of Revenue and the Department of Ag about enforcement. That's why in the one bill you mentioned last year, the past 2 years that were in the House, didn't get across the schedule because the Ag didn't have a plan or the money flow for that. So that's a good point. But that's where we followed up between the Ag and Department of Revenue. If we do keep it on the shelves, how they could enforce it, and how much would it cost? I think we had a question online as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your testimony. I think I have 3 questions, if you'll indulge me. They're all yes or no questions, so I think it should be actually pretty fast to get through. The first one, just hearkening back to something the chairman brought up, yes or no question. Is Kratom FDA approved for any medical indication or health use?
Yes,
It is not.
I can explain.
You're saying that Kratom is FDA approved for any clinical indication or health use?
For the health use, yes.
That's not what the FDA says.
That's
So-
that's not correct. Under the respectfully, Representative, under the dietary supplement, health and DSHEA, I'm sorry, Health Education Act, there is a process where a Kratom manufacturer can submit to the FDA a new dietary ingredient notification. There have been many companies that have done that. It requires the FDA then to evaluate the safety data provided by the by the manufacturer, and then the FDA can object, and then they resolve it.
All
And
right.
then at the conclusion of that process, and there have been many companies who have gone through that process, entered the marketplace, the burden is on the FDA to take them off the market if they think they're unsafe. They haven't done
Okay,
so.
so it's just as noted, Kratom is not currently FDA approved for any health indication or medical use.
That's not true.
Here's the second yes or no question. I think we can generally agree on this committee and pretty much overall that synthetic extracts of Kratom, including 7-hydroxymetragenine, should be more regulated because of their higher potency. However, I think distinguishing between these two products as though they are totally different gives a sense that Kratom itself is safer than it is because you're treating 7-OH as this entirely novel product. So the question is, are 7-OH and metragenine metabolites of Kratom?
No,
They're not.
no,
Wow.
and I can explain.
You must have a different fact pattern than,
Representative, respectfully, the 7-OH does not occur in the natural plant. It is a metabolite, but metragenine is an inherent alkaloid among 50 plus alkaloids that Dr. McCurdy describes as a symphony of how they work together. 7-OH occurs after harvesting in the catalyzing during the drying process. And it occurs as the FDA described it and as the HHS secretary described it and the DA administrator in trace amounts. It's only when it is chemically manipulated that it becomes an opioid because they flip the content of 7-OH to being the majority of the product. During Prohibition days, we wouldn't call corn moonshine. You cannot call metrogene 7-OH. They are not the same. They occur only in trace amounts. And when it's processed in the liver, as was described to the committee in the last meeting by the Emory professor, it occurs at such a low level, the blood plasma never get to the 7-OH levels that are in these 7-OH products. That's the problem.
So as noted, 7-OH as sold is a synthetic extract from the kratom leaf that is more concentrated. However, what it means when you say something is a metabolite is that when it is converted in the human body, as in when you take kratom, that's what metabolite means. And also just to clarify that 7-OH, though we use it sort of casually, what that stands for is 7-hydroxymetragene. So
correct, but that's a chemical reformulation, Representative. That is not in the trace amounts that occurs.
A
It is
metabolite
deliberately engineered to be an opioid.
A metabolite means that is what the human body converts it to. So do these metabolites have action at the opioid receptor?
They do. As you heard Dr. McCurdy explain, that the difference between the natural plant, which has trace levels, amounts of 7-OH, when they hit the mu-opioid receptor, metrogene actually moderates the activity and competes with 7-OH. And that's why it has the partial agonist effect that goes to the sector of the brain that improves your mood, gives you a little pain relief, not to the euphoric high. 7-OH, when it's the dominant product, competes at the mu-opioid receptor, it overwhelms metrogene, goes to the euphoric high center, puts you at risk for respiratory depression.
So given that 7-hydroxymetragene and metrogene are metabolites of kratom, and they have action at the opioid receptor, do you think, this is a yes or no question, do you think that substances that have action at the opioid receptor, AKA opiates, should be sold over the counter and at gas stations?
Trick question, no,
Not a trick
emphatically
question.
no. It's a trick question, respectfully, because natural kratom products at the levels at which metrogene and 7-OH occur, and you can look at the FDA data on the FDA and 7-OH website, shows they are dramatically, chemically, deliberately engineered opioids, which the 7-OH is, where metrogene is not classified as an opioid. Many things have activity at the mu-opioid receptors, as you know. They are not full-blown opioids. And that the chemically engineering done by the 7-OH manufacturers makes them into full-blown opioids. They are synthetic, chemically manipulated products.
Just to be clear, the definition of an opioid is something that acts at the opioid receptor. That is literally the definition of what opioid is. It does
I
not involve-
respectfully disagree, there is no way that the FDA calls kratom an opioid or scientists call it an opioid, the metrogene. They don't do that. And this is an absurd example, but cheese operates at the opioid receptor level because of the content of cheese. It is why pizza is the most popular food in America, because it stimulates people because of activity to mu-opioid receptors. We do not call cheese an opioid.
We'll leave it here. Appreciate your interesting fact pattern. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Representative Al. Any other questions from the committee?
Yeah, I have one. Do you take kratom?
I do. 10 years.
Okay. The question that I want to say to everybody is, or the point that I want to make is that kratom is effectively not legal to be imported in the United States for human consumption. That's what it says.
I agree.
That's what we were testified about. So why are we sitting here going around slinging all this stuff when it's supposed to be illegal? If it's illegal, it's illegal, and we should enforce it. So that's my point to it. And there are a lot of people that have been hurt by this stuff. You show those products over there. We all use some of the, I've never had a Monster drink. I don't need a Monster drink. But you know, a cause of death can be caused by obesity. There's a lot of different things that can be done to cause you to die. But we have a situation here with this kratom that it's taking over some young folks, and it's taking over people vulnerable that don't know. Now, I'm one of these skeptics. I'm old, you can tell. I'm probably older than you are, but I don't like medicine at all. But we need to make sure that we follow the law, and the law says it's not supposed to come in the United States of America for human consumption. To me, that is the overlying reason that we should look at this. It's illegal. Thank you, sir.
So Representative, I'm 76. I'm not sure how we compare in age. You look younger than me. But I can tell you this, that you have a fundamental misunderstanding of the import alert. Let me explain. You cannot import kratom and then ingest it in its raw form. So in order to import, the importer has to declare in advance to the FDA with a document that they submit, and they say, I'm importing kratom. It is not going to be used for human consumption. It'll be used for reformulation into a product. The FDA at that point can seize the product. They have done that occasionally because they suspect that the paperwork wasn't properly filled out. They're not certain that they're not just going to issue it for human consumption. Then they release it. This is done commonly. The reason there are 24 million Americans using kratom today is because kratom is coming in legally when they follow the proper procedures and paperwork. And trust me, if the FDA did as you're suggesting, they would stop it at the border. It all comes in, with the exception of a little bit from Hawaii and a little bit from Florida. It all comes in from Southeast Asia. So this is not difficult, and it all comes in registered documentation. There have been bad actors who tried to evade that process, call it fertilizer, food dye, and they're using it just to sell to the powdered kratom to everybody without reformulating it. So that's why product COAs, certificate analysis, are very important along the way. It's not, as you suggested, illegal for kratom products to be imported into the United States.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Representative Meeks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your comments. I'd like to acknowledge that there are those who utilize kratom for different purposes that is helpful to their health. Understand that. This committee today is, as we have talked about, is talking about the youth exposure to kratom. That's our focus today. We acknowledge that the manufacturers and there are packaging that has been attractive to kids. We've seen it with other products that other committees have developed policy to regulate in our state. And given the health benefits that we hear that kratom can use to be treated, my question is simple. It ain't a trick question. It's just simply, should things and substances of this nature be sold in a venue that is so readily available to those who don't know what they're taking?
Thank you for that question. When I spoke at Nora Volko, who's the director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse, talked about this issue in congressional testimony and statements she made about the importance of having products that are potentially valuable harm reduction tools available to people because of the stigma, and you heard that from some of the addiction recovery specialists, the stigma associated with being an addict. And she recommends that kratom, specifically singled out kratom, should be readily accessible. The problem she described is that many people won't seek treatment. So if it's a safer product, certainly use it. That's why she spent over $100 million studying it. And she said that if you have it available, a person will get it because they can't find a treatment bed, or they can't afford it, either in rural settings or even in urban settings. So her point is, she actually studies this in her own lab at NIDA. She says, this is a safer product. It's not going to cause the harm that an opioid will, which is why the NIH just embarked on their study. I agree completely that packaging that is attractive to children should be eliminated. But I can tell you this, This kratom tastes so bad, kids don't like it. And they're only going to take the spike stuff because it gives them a euphoric high. Natural kratom doesn't do that. 7-OH does. That's why we got to get it off the shelves. And some natural kratom leaf products that have used these industrial grade solvents to spike the potency, they should be removed from the shelves as well.
But is it not true that that one time may be the only time? If you're using a spike product that's being bought at a convenience store, one time may be the only time.
Amen. Absolutely true.
So
Which is
my
why we
point
need
is, and to the testimony that we've heard from others, and the gentleman spoke of, you go in to buy a bottle of water and it's there, it's right there, you know, and you didn't answer the question. Is it one of those products that should be sold in a convenience store or a vape shop where people are going in and purchasing with at least without any guidance, or maybe some guidance from a pharmacist, if that's where it is, as to the benefits and or the risk?
Yes, that's why we advocate for every product that is sold in the state of Georgia has to be registered, proven with a COA from an independent lab that it's compliant, every product. And
I
then
get that, but you're not answering my question. Should we sell it in a convenience store? Yes or no? It's simple.
I just answered that from what Nora Volko says.
I'm asking you.
Yes.
We should be able to sell it in a convenience store.
Not the bad stuff. I didn't say that, and I won't say that because I think those products should be removed from the marketplace. But the majority of natural kratom leaf consumers use it as a replacement for a cup of coffee. Yeah, they see an energy boost, increased focus. A second tranche, and this is from Dr. Oliver Grundman that the chairman has referred to in the past on his research. The second bucket of people use it to improve their mood and fight off feelings of anxiety, all serving size dependent. And then that third group, which are the people that are treating acute and chronic pain, that's me. And then a subset of that group are trying to get off opioids. That's not me. But they find success with it. So is the product dangerous? That's the critical part. 7-OH is dangerous. Spiked kratom products that use industrial grade solvents are dangerous. Let's get them off the marketplace. Should you be able to buy kratom in a convenience store? Absolutely.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Ridley.
I guess, first of all, like being sold in a gas station, I think is not the right argument because we buy alcohol and tobacco in a gas station, which the FDA says there's no known health benefit to, and any kid can walk in and see the tobacco and alcohol. So I disagree with that argument. But the one thing that I was on the medical marijuana study committee last year, and the one thing they complained about was just like you, it's the lack of access to be able to testify. But when the lobbyists did testify and took the time like you are right now, they had 3 or 4 advocates with them and split their time with them on why this was beneficial. They drug up the crying child who no longer had seizures, and you're relying purely on public testimony. So I guess, why aren't you bringing your own people using your time to tell their stories, and we're relying only on the public comment?
Yeah, fair. I didn't think about doing that. I heard the complaints of the 24 that were at the last hearing. They said that it's I don't know if this is true. They said it's a 3 to 3.5 hour drive, depending on this, whether you follow speed limit or not, to come over here with not knowing whether they would be able to testify. And when I looked at the agenda, I abandoned the scientific discussion. I'm going to submit that. I did submit the PowerPoint, but this was so, I'm sorry, stacked. And you look at everybody's anti-kratom, and you have this island there, me. And so I'm obviously responding. And I think it's a good, I'm sorry.
Wait a second, guys.
There are some advocates.
Excuse me, Mr. Haddow, if I can take over from here. Representative, if I can add to that comment you just made, just for point of reference, since you mentioned it, first meeting, I think Mr. Keene will agree, the people he's asked to testify, I have let them testify, or in the future. Another kratom lobbyist had the Amir researcher last time testify. We've got another one who wanted one testify in Athens or Bremen. They'll be testifying. So I have responded to that industry. So anyway, I appreciate that question.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, you did not invite the Global Kratom Coalition to participate in this hearing. You did not invite the Botanics for Better Health and Wellness to participate.
And we can
in this
discuss
hearing.
that afterwards. If we have the same lobbyist in mind who represents Global Kratom, they have been included.
They were,
So
no.
appreciate your,
I asked, Mr. Chairman, they were not
I
invited.
appreciate your testimony, Mr. Hadow.
It-
Thank
but-
you. Have a
Mr.
nice,
Mr.
thank you,
Chairman,
Mr. Thank you,
Mr.
Mr. Hadow. I appreciate.
Respectfully, I just think you ought to
appreciate
listen.
the testimony.
I hope the Kratom advocates can have time today to testify.
We will have public comments this meeting. Thank you
Okay.
for your
And
testimony.
then I'll hand out
Thank you
our
for your
complaint.
testimony.
I know you want to cut me off, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say I'll hand out the complaint so that the committee can look at it. We do this regretfully, but we think that there's no opportunity for this to be heard.
Mr. Hadow, thank you. Okay, I believe we'll continue with the advocacy policy advocate perspective. Everyone have to change out their microphone. And since we got to change out their microphone, let's have a 5-minute break for the restroom break. Thank you. Okay, sorry about that. They got to change out the mics.
Yeah, so they're gonna go on break, but
Correct.
yeah,
You can
so
say
this
that
isn't an
when we come
actual
back.
ban hearing.
This is insane.
Yeah, dude, and Mac knew he was walking into the lion's den.
Yeah.
So, I mean, honestly, he's kept his cool. I wouldn't have been able to keep my cool. This is bullshit.
And still, just like the last hearing, they're not talking about youth exposure at all.
Exactly. They didn't
brought up.
Yeah.
It's brought up, but they're not discussing it.
And that's the whole thing. Like, it's just like a whole fucking summer or their time off, a whole vacation filled with anti-kratom
Yeah.
committees, so that when the legislative session starts, all these people are going to be influenced and they're going to be like, well, we need to just ban it all. But,
Mac,
you know,
what?
Mac,
I don't care. I'm fixing to post this. I was actually typing it up on my X. I don't give a shit how you feel about Mr. Mac Haddo. He brought the heat today.
Yep.
And you can best believe we're going to clip up this part.
you said, no, it's not a ban hearing. No. This is just like, it's called the Blue Ribbon Committee on Kratom Youth Exposure and Other Gas Station Substances or something like that.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
technically it's supposed to be about all the stuff that you can purchase at a gas station that the youth may have
Access to.
Right. And so like but I mean, when you watch it, come on, dude, it's literally an anti-kratom committee. He's
Yeah.
like calling in the big people. Like, did you hear that one guy that was like talking about Christ and all that shit and his brother being addicted? He's like, I guess Townsend called him. So
Huh.
it's like, he's calling these people and been like, hey, we need to.
And
drill-
Susan Cave lives in Florida.
Yep.
Talking about she was in Blairsville, Georgia or something like that. No, she lives in Florida.
You're right, Castle. And you know what? That right there. It's like, even if Matt got up there and argued every single one of their points, it would have fallen on deaf ears. I think it's good he pointed out the fucking bias that this whole fucking
Exactly.
ended was. Man, you got that right. Matt gets so much shit from all fucking sides, dude.
Yeah.
And it's
And you
like,
know what? He got up there and he spoke. He defended the Kratom advocates.
Yep. That are talking shit about him every day. Even the ones that want to talk crap. If you're a Kratom consumer, he defended you today.
He sure did. He sure did.
And he does every day.
He was on fire. He brought the sermon.
Yeah. And that's the thing. That's the thing. Like, if you think, okay, so the whole title of this committee. So why are gas stations selling to kids?
Yeah.
Like, y'all don't even need to have a committee. You need to enforce your laws.
This right here is it's a front. It's a front. This is a side hearing because Townsend didn't get his way earlier this year because his bill died. He wanted to ban Kratom again this year. He comes every year with the ban bill.
Yeah.
Then he wanted it put behind the pharmacy counter. So he couldn't get the ban. So he compromised with putting it behind the pharmacy counter. That didn't go through. You best believe he gonna bring another bill next year.
And it's like everybody's just having to sit through this. It's almost like, oh my God, dude. Yeah, I wouldn't have been able to be level headed, especially when Townsend's like, cutting him off.
Yeah. That was a cockfight.
I know that's right. I know that's right. Yeah.
Because I think he said something like at the last hearing, there was 24 pro-kratom advocates that were there and didn't get to speak.
They
You know,
need to
because
just round up all the people that are selling to these gas stations and like fine them or something. I don't know.
oh man.
Selling to kids. Yeah, and not only did Kolodny testify last time, but Shatterproof testifies today.
Yeah, yep. Shatterproof is huge Suboxone dealer.
Yeah. And the in kratom addiction testifies today. I mean, dude, if you look at the agenda, Mac is literally the only
one
person today. And for him to say you didn't even ask for scientists today, and dude saying, oh, well, they were at the last one. So there was anti-kratom people at the last one too.
It was stacked at the last one. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, there was that one guy that was speaking for the rep, I think Jack Kingston or something like that, and he was reading the FDA and HHS and DEA stuff. Seemed like he was on our side too. But other than that, if you look at the agenda, no, it's all anti. And then at the end, it says if time, whatever, that public comments can be, advocates or whatever can get up there and speak. Why isn't there a pro-kratom advocate allotted time like Susan Cave?
Yeah.
And like I said, her son had 2 SSRIs in his system. He had Benadryl, and then he had kratom. And he drowned.
God, I hope not, Keith. God, I hope not. I don't know who's there for kratom addiction, but oh, man. Oh, man.
Oh, it's supposed to be that Hillary chick.
Okay. I mean, it's bad either way, but good Lord. Dean is hard to listen to.
It's supposed to be his little secretary chick.
Yeah, and that lady on Zoom, you can tell their intentions are to ban. Like all their questions are pointedly like trying to disprove anything, saying that it should not be banned.
Everybody, break's just about over.
All right, here we go.
Oh. No, not the Benadryl lady. It was another lady. Well, I mean, her son, not the Benadryl lady, not Davenport. Yeah, Davenport's the Benadryl lady. This is like, I've noticed a lot have had Benadryl.
Yeah. Zoom lady thinks she's an MD. She is an MD.
Yeah.
Well, she's a doctor of, I don't remember what it was though, but at the last hearing, she was posting up, kissing Kolodny's ass on X.
Yeah.
Didn't even reply to none of my comments. None.
That's what I'm saying too. Like, this one is hard. Like, I can't, dude, I saw Max sitting there in the audience just stoic, and I'm like, dude, I could not sit in this room. I couldn't do it. And then they act like they're like he's getting attacked, like he's attacking Townsend. I hate it when people act like that. Like they sit there and keep poking the bear and pushing you around. And then when you actually like just defend yourself, you're attacking them. Get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
I hate that.
I know, Dylan, huh? This has my blood boiling as well. I rolled out of bed early for this shit.
It's like, dude. But yeah, I mean, at least we're all sitting here watching this bullshit together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man.
We can all have a collective blood boiling session, and that
Yeah.
right there just furthers our advocacy even harder.
Dude, this 708 crap, dude. It's like my thing is like if the DEA is about to take action, why waste your time on all this?
Like I said, this is nothing but a front. This is nothing but a front. This right here, it produces news articles that come out, you know, and that way it spreads to the public even further. So that when he brings his ban bill again next year, you know, it'll already taint the news. You know, it already taint the people reading the news.
Okay, everybody, we'll go ahead and get started. Next,
Here we
I'll just
go.
tell you how the agenda is going to run. We'll have Lee Kaufman, Vice President of Public Policy for Shatterproof. She'll be online. Hillary Teshek from Kratom Dorson should be online. Next, we'll go back to Amber Young, who's
See, that's
here.
only the
Amber,
people
appreciate
who
you
wants
being here.
online can
Thank you very
testify.
much. And we'll get you in just a few minutes. And so if we can kind of queue up Lee. You're physically here. That's right. I knew that.
He
Thanks
said
for being
Kratom
here.
Dorson.
He did?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a terrible
Yeah,
place
I
to
did
have to
see.
visit. Great. Can I control my slides or? Thank you so much. Great. Well, whenever you're ready, then we'll get started.
Here comes Shatterproof.
Alrighty. So my name is Leah Kaufman. I am Vice President of Public Policy at Shatterproof. We are a national nonprofit organization dedicated to addressing the addiction crisis. We do a lot of different work, including stigma reduction, so people aren't afraid to go and seek treatment. We focus on access to care, and we've done an increasing amount of work around youth protections over the last 2 years, specifically related to emerging substances. A lot of that in the last year was focused on intoxicating hemp products. We work with partners at other organizations like Partnership to End Addiction to implement best practices that we know work when it comes to protecting youth. And Kratom has been an increasing issue of concern for a lot of the states we've been working with the last few years. So today we're going to we'll go over those best practices. I actually saved them for the end. I wanted to go through a few state examples. We're doing work all across the country. The last year or so, we've been working actively with 12 states, and we've been able to pass youth protections in 7 of those. And we're working now with kind of this wave of states that passed early Kratom Consumer Protection Act bills that are now finding gaps in those. And then we'll talk about enforcement. I think several people brought up enforcement and the challenges there. And I think that's probably the most important part of this discussion. First, I did want to note that Mac said that Shatterproof is funded by addiction recovery groups. We're actually primarily funded by individual donors, people with the disease of addiction or those who have been impacted by it. We also receive private foundation grants, state grants. We're a 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. And I'm sure somewhere in there are a couple addiction recovery groups. We tend to have, a mixed relationship with folks because one of our streams of work is holding treatment facilities accountable to delivering high quality care. And you can imagine that ruffles feathers once in a while. So, but with that, I think we'll go ahead and dive in here. You all have seen all these products, right? So I just put some photos of the various types of products. The biggest challenge we're dealing with is that the market is so diversified. There are hundreds and hundreds of products out there. We have on the left-hand side, these quote unquote whole leaf kratom or natural leaf, comes in powder form and in capsules most commonly. You see these confectionery products, these little ice cream cones. And I believe it's the Kratom Industries, supported Dr. McCurdy, who actually puts up this ice cream cone slide a lot to talk about, this is technically 3 servings. He said that in a slide presentation once. And how are you supposed to divide that ice cream cone into 3? I thought he made a great point. These little donuts, this extract, these are obviously marketed to children. And then you have some of the tablets and the high concentration 7-OH products over on the right.
I think like underlying everything I'm going to say today, I don't have the answer for you on exactly what you should do. We're going to, there's so many unknowns with Kratom because there hasn't been the type of safety and efficacy data, the long-term research that an FDA approval process would subject it to, right? So I think first and foremost, you cannot assume that a for-profit industry is going to act in the best interest and is going to regulate themselves appropriately. We know that there have been increases in kratom-related poison control. Senate reports to poison control. I believe someone earlier had said, I hadn't seen the Georgia-specific data, a 66% increase season. That sounds, a little bit higher than what we're seeing out west. I'm in Texas. I know we've had a really high rate there as well. We're also seeing, and part of the challenge with this is someone mentioned adverse event reporting and data. You cannot improve what you aren't tracking. So I think this is so critical. So you have the Poison Control Center data, you have EMS data. So we looking at the increase in EMS calls linked to kratom. My husband is a firefighter paramedic, and I hear stories from her firsthand about this. But they weren't tracking this. Not all states are using the EMS data to track this, right? They're not necessarily poison control, I think, they started tracking this better last January. So a lot of the data that we have is new. And we hear from addiction medicine clinicians constantly. Some of them don't know what to do. They don't know how to treat people who are using kratom, and especially with the diversity of products out there. But we know that buprenorphine is the primary way that they're treating kratom addiction right now. This is one of the 3 FDA-approved medications that we use for opioid use disorder, and it is effective on kratom. And we know that addiction medicine doctors are encouraging patients to carry naloxone. Naloxone does work to reverse most kratom overdoses. It sounds like there's a small fraction, I'm not a clinician, but a small fraction of overdoses that cannot be reversed with naloxone. But the important point is that you really aren't doing harm when you're giving someone naloxone. It's safer to use it than not. So how do we do this? So we have other substances that we've regulated, obviously. We learned a lot from alcohol, just balancing the public health and the public safety side of things. We obviously have licensing systems. The state controls distribution and in some cases, limits on outlet density. So how many shops are able to sell this? Where can people get these products? I think it might've been Derek who said earlier, his brother walks in the gas station or someone walks in the gas station and their products are just right there next to the chips and, it's easy to access. And it makes it harder for people who are in recovery. And then we have excise taxes. I'm not a tax expert, but I wanted to talk to you about a little bit about taxes and enforcement later. So some things that don't work when we look at translating what we've done for something like alcohol to kratom. Alcohol, we know what it is, right? You have your beer, you have your wine, you have your grain alcohol. It looks pretty much the same. This market though, kratom, it's changing. There are extraction technologies, there's alkaloid isolation. I know you all got the science version, of how all this works at the last hearing and stuff, so I won't get into that. But just to point out that there is, when you see like one product, you've seen one product. And so that provides a huge challenge to us from a regulatory standpoint. And the uncertainty. So there's not a lot of research around kratom. We have a little bit, like we have worked with one of my favorite experts is from, it's Dr. Cornell Stanchu from Dartmouth. It took us a long time to find an expert who's been researching kratom who has not taken money from industry. And I want to acknowledge that research is expensive, and just because someone has taken money doesn't mean that their work is not good, but we wanted to have the most unbiased and balanced opinions and information available. So we've worked with him and he has shared some of these concerns on the slide. We just don't know what this is going to do long-term. All right, so this is not Shatterproof's work, but I wanted to share briefly the Partnership to End Addictions work. They have created a youth protection framework, And we initially started working with them on this related to marijuana, youth protections for marijuana and intoxicating hemp products. I know you all were talking about, Delta 8 products like that a year or two ago. So well, here, let's look at the. So some of the challenges, I think we just kind of talked about all of these, right? And when a substance is legal, you see people prioritizing profits over health. We saw the video of them targeting youth. There are perceptions of safety, oh, I can walk into the gas station and buy this. So someone obviously vetted this, it's fine, right? I have 3 teenagers who I worry about every day because, they walk into the gas station and I wouldn't let them buy an energy drink either, but they could buy an energy drink or they could buy Kratom products and no one's checking that. And they're assuming that they're fine because otherwise, why would 7-Eleven have it? So the partnerships framework, they looked at decades of research on tobacco, nicotine, alcohol, and marijuana literature. And I encourage you, I will provide to you, Mr. Chairman, this report. It has we already know exactly what we need to do to protect youth from substances generally. Do we have all the answers to Kratom? No, but I think that a lot of this will get you, part of the way towards where you're headed. They did a landscape review of all the state laws, what different states are doing, how those things have been effective in minimizing youth access. And then they recommended a bunch of different areas that we'll be diving into. I'm going to go into 5 of these just after we talk about the state examples, the product composition, packaging and labeling. You've heard all of these today, advertising and marketing, the manufacture and sale. I think there is one thing that Mac and I agree on, and that is that these certificate of analyses, this independent lab testing piece. So we can talk about that. And then the sale and distribution to youth. So I want to talk about the KCPA bills. So KCPA, it's kind of a misnomer. None of these bills, or I shouldn't say none. There are some states that have used the same model bill. But most of these bills have variations. You see one KCPA bill, and that's not what it looks like from state to state. On the left, you can see things that are generally in a KCPA bill, generally things that industry supports, that we support, that are less controversial. Age restrictions, 18 or 21, we would say 21 is the gold standard for that. Not including dangerous non-kratom substances. Everyone agrees we don't want heavy metals in anything. Products that have less than, so this is kind of a catch here, less than 2% of the alkaloids contains 7-OH. I think there was some misinformation shared earlier. There is 7-OH is in whole leaf kratom. There are a whole bunch of alkaloids. I think we used the word maybe derivatives or something else earlier. We've been using alkaloids because I feel like it's easier to understand that as like individual ingredients making up the kratom leaf, right? There are metragenine is like 66% or something of the alkaloid content in kratom leaf. And 7-OH, where they get this 2% is 7-OH is less than 2%. What they often fail to share is that 7-OH is extremely potent compared to metragenine. And then let's see, administrative fines. We'll talk a little bit about administrative fines. I think I have a good example from Utah. And then on the other side, so gaps in the KCPA bills, meaningful retailer and manufacturer oversight. I know we're here to talk about that. This is testing. This is licensing facilities that are both manufacturing it and selling it. This is product labeling. These are the certificates of analysis that he mentioned, and the independent lab testing, and then the marketing and advertising protections. Increasingly, we've seen states actually including youth marketing and advertising provisions in their bills. I think that's been a really positive trend the last couple of years. But this last piece, the adverse event data, is usually overlooked. Texas. I chose Texas because I'm from Texas. And we have a very similar bill to you all. Our KCPA bans, all the things on that sample KCPA bill in the last slide. We also don't have a licensure process or a product registry process. So that has been a huge challenge. RAG's office, I won't read it, but it's on the slide here. They went around and they sampled products and they tested them, and almost nothing is adhering to this. In fact, the 96% 7-OH being in these products, that's pretty pretty egregious. One of the challenges we have in Texas is that we have a lot of rural areas, right? We have a lot of independent gas stations, independent carryout stores. And generally, it's been a lot easier for the chains to, they're pretty adherent to whatever policies are out there. But I drive my son around to travel baseball, and without fail, every other game at least, I walk into a gas station where we have not only Kratom, but also the banned hemp-derived products just right next to the chips, not compliant with the laws. So you're not the only state experiencing this for sure. I won't tell you what you have in Georgia. Just this slide is, this is complicated. If you're going, you have to have a really complex regulatory infrastructure in order to enforce. And then there's the alternative to a regulatory structure, and that is, of course, scheduling. Kansas this year had looked at, they had initially looked at scheduling 7-OH and ultimately decided to schedule both 7-OH and metragynine products. They wanted the clarity that scheduling offers, and giving law enforcement a much clearer tool to address illegal manufacture, distribution, and sale. When we talked to a lot of law enforcement organizations that you walk in a gas station and you don't know which products are compliant and which aren't. Especially even if you've gone to a regulatory structure, if there's not standardized packaging and labeling, and they can't pull up a number of the product that's registered. I mean, how are you supposed to know what's okay and what's not? So this is obviously, something that addresses a lot of those complicated questions, but it also comes potentially with some, downsides. I think one thing that Kansas did, we would caution against criminalizing consumers. So when you add something, you schedule it unless there's a carve out for personal possession. You're criminalizing these individuals who might be struggling with this. We know the war on drugs didn't work, not in that way. We would focus on manufacturer and distributor compliance and penalties on that side of things if you were to go a scheduling route. So I never thought I'd see the headline that Massachusetts follows North Dakota, but we all agree on something, I guess. So Massachusetts did in fact follow North Dakota in scheduling or emergency scheduling Kratom. North Dakota has a special session that starts in September where they're specifically looking at this. They're prohibiting all Kratom products in North Dakota. And then on the Massachusetts side, I wanted to note a few things that were unique about what Massachusetts did. They did the same thing as North Dakota on the scheduling front with a couple important programs tied to that. So they're pairing the scheduling with the public education effort. If you were going to schedule something, you have to think about, I think someone here pointed out, there are people who are using these products who might be dependent on them and may experience withdrawal. So you would want to make sure that you're connecting those people to treatment. So Massachusetts has, they're trying to connect people to care. They have a public education effort to explain what the products are, because as everyone has agreed on also, it's complicated. You don't know what's in some of these products. And then finally, they have been educating people that naloxone can be used to reverse overdoses. So I would believe all of that is really positive. That's it. On the regulatory side, I love to use Utah as an example. Utah has one of the longest regulated Kratom markets in the country. They've been doing this for a while and they have learned a lot of lessons. They had started off with a KCPA that I think was fairly similar to, the sort that Georgia started with. But this last session, they refined that based on the experience they've been having. The Department of Agriculture was one of the primary authorities regulating it. And there are a lot of challenges on the enforcement side. So I think the best thing that they did in this bill was they moved all of their products to, you can't sell it in gas stations and convenience stores. So they're all in tobacco, like licensed tobacco smoke shop type facilities. And then extracts and products made from extracts can't be sold. They have had a product registry and a licensure process. From what I understand, they were having issues staffing that, like the dollars to operate the enforcement, people to go out and test products. It looks like they're focused on improving that piece as well. And what else on Utah? I think it'll come to me. West Virginia. All right, so this is a little sticky because I know that, or I understand my limited tax understanding that Georgia money, if you put money towards enforcement, I mean, it would have to go to the general fund. So I think if you were to tax these products, you aren't automatically able to do what West Virginia did, but I wanted to share it as an example to consider. They have a wonderful permit process. So they have fees from for licensure, fees for products added to the registry, and they have tax revenue, an 11% privilege tax on all Kratom products. That is divided into 3 different pots of money you can see on the slide. The Department of Agriculture is getting the bulk of it because they're doing most of the enforcement. Alcohol beverage control is getting a piece of that. We've seen more states that are not just relying on ag, but they have the alcohol beverage control, or even the cannabis control commissions or similar group also doing some enforcement. And I don't know what you all have here. I think you have. Yeah. Okay. And they have a substance abuse fund. I love that piece. I think it's so important to have put money towards, public education, towards programs like naloxone distribution, all the good things they're doing in West Virginia. But in the bold there's $6 million in revenue collection from taxes and fees, which is not a small number. And it's allowed West Virginia to have a meaningful way of tackling the enforcement piece of this. And not to say it's perfect, because it's certainly not, but they are struggling less than other states on the enforcement piece.
And Ms. Kaufman, if you can talk about the youth too, you mentioned part of your presentations on the youth and kind of.
Yes, of course. This is the end here. So there's 5 different areas for youth protections. This is all from the partnerships framework, which I will send you. But looking at access controls, some of the things you already know about, 21 age restrictions, behind the counter placement. West Virginia does something cool where they require ID scanning. I understand that's not widely used for Kratom products, but that it can be used in like nightclubs, right? Or other venues. Proximity buffers. So we don't want shops that are selling this near schools or playgrounds or places that children congregate. And then I guess the most expensive, complicated piece, but also very effective, is compliance checks using underage decoys. It's like secret shoppers to see if your laws are actually being enforced. I wanted to address the pharmacy counter thing. I know we've talked about this. So we went back to look at is there anywhere that is putting products behind a pharmacy counter? I found an example from Australia. Unfortunately, couldn't find anything from the US just because these products are not FDA approved. But in Australia, they put nicotine pouches and vapes that are used for smoking cessation behind the pharmacy counter, with the idea that, the pharmacist is counseling, how to use these products. Putting it behind the counter makes age verification easier. It reduces product visibility. It can create friction. That's what we want to do, is we want to create friction and make it harder to get these products. But I think it also comes with the risk of maybe legitimizing or making these products feel safer than they necessarily are, than we have the data to show that they are, right? This product hasn't gone through the rigorous FDA vetting process. There are a lot of risks. If I'm getting it from my pharmacist, I'm probably going to feel like it's much potentially less risky than it is. Also, there's the question of pharmacists are not trained on how to use Kratom because it's not FDA approved. And, you would have to educate the pharmacist to make sure that they have the best data available. Product standards. We don't need to get into this in too much detail, but this is about the lab testing. Happy to send more on any of this. The form and packaging restrictions, child resistant packaging. These are all things we wanted with cannabis products, just making sure that if kids aren't able to get into these and have accidental exposures. And then clear labeling is the biggest piece of this. The labels, they don't look the same. We need to know what a dose is. If you're going to keep this out there, right? You need to know what a dose is that's safe. And there's very little data showing what a safe dose is. Nothing on 7-OH certainly, and very limited data to tell you how many milligrams of a metragine-only product you could have before you start to see an increase in adverse events. We have one study that our expert from Dartmouth shares. It's like 53.2 milligrams was the cap that where they didn't see a lot of adverse events. But this is also a small study, and you know, it was a small group, and it's you take like long-term clinical trials to really know what's safe and what's not. But if you're looking for the best available evidence, it would be, you know, that cap, and then he had suggested 3 servings per package, right? But that doesn't, you know, with the caveat that that doesn't mean it's safe. That's just, if you had to do it based on the best available evidence, this is how you could do it and potentially minimize risk. Just 3 more and then we'll be done. Retailer manufacturer oversight. Yeah, this would take a long time to get into. I provided you a Nebraska example. They have a good graduated penalty structure. So looking on the enforcement side, we didn't touch on this yet, just making sure that there's a process where you can both fine people and then increase the fine for repeat violations and then yank their license, assuming you would hopefully implement a licensure structure if you decide to go with regulation. And Maryland has a good example as well of a product registry. They also have, they did another bill this year enabling the state to seize and destroy products that are not compliant, which you think would be obvious, but a lot of states haven't done that yet. Advertising and marketing, yeah, I think everyone agrees on this. We don't want cartoon characters and colorful packaging. Let's see. Oh, on the bottom right, this is interesting. The prohibiting kratom advertising in like venues where youth gather, or even like online places where more than a certain % of the audience is under 21. But this is an example that calls out like stadiums, concerts, sporting events. The other piece of this, there's been a lot of targeting of youth athletes. I mean, just athletes in general. I think someone today had shared that they use it, like we're using it after workouts or for pain related to that. For a long time, I think it was one of the football leagues, not the NFL, but was a mainstay. They had like a kratom manufacturer as one of their primary sponsors, and they obviously discontinued that. And you now see all of these groups recommending that their athletes don't use kratom products. But I think it's just, you know, good to be aware of. This is a picture of a product called Kratom Workout. And there are claims that, you know, you shouldn't be able to permit claims that it can treat certain conditions like anxiety. And finally, just to reiterate the adverse event violation reporting, you need to have good data on what's happening no matter what you do. You need to make sure that whether it's wastewater surveillance or it's poison control or it's EMS or it's fire or it's testing data from law enforcement agencies, you need to know what your baseline is and whether like how what you have done has reduced harms. But I think that is it, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Committee questions. Representative Corbett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your testimony. You're talking about pharmacy, if you put it behind the counter. Would a pharmacist even be willing to do that, being it's not FDA approved? What kind of liability would they be assuming if they do that? Or, I mean, that's would be an issue. I think.
That's a great question, and I cannot answer that. I don't. We have worked with pharmacy boards where states have chosen to go look at scheduling of 7-OH or other alkaloids, but I don't know how the pharmacy folks would respond to that.
And one other question on the this product here we passed around. Oh, did you pass it? Was this yours?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I've asked you this question, throw it out there. But it says it's full panel, third party lab tested for safety. Got a QR code. I pull that QR code up. It takes me to a page. You select flowers or all different products, and I never get to shows the full panel analysis.
Yeah.
On this, like the little blue bottle down here, it has shows the content of 7-OH in that, but on QR code I can't. So not necessarily a question, just a comment on what comes.
No, we've seen that a lot. Or not even just the QR code to the testing, but you know, where it's been required to have contact information for a company, you'll often call the company or go to the website, and it's not good anymore. So that's part of what a product registry can solve is you'll have a number on there, you'll know the product's registered, you will be able to scan the QR code and see exactly what's in it.
Yeah, I never could get to the full panel analysis.
Yeah.
Thank you. Other questions?
Sure.
Representative Meeks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here today in your testimony. And realizing that you covered several states that have different regulations and laws in place, did any of them have the capability and the infrastructure to test these products, or do you know if they're doing state labs, or do you know if they're using third-party labs in order to test what they're pulling out to see what's actually on the market?
Yeah, it's a mix. I haven't seen one state that's doing it perfectly. Utah had a great structure on paper, but as we all saw, or I think you all saw at this point, they had to refine what they're doing this year because it wasn't working. And their Department of Agriculture didn't have the staff to keep up with that. So I think we have a lot of things that look good on paper, and the biggest challenge on the enforcement side has been resources, which is why I bring up that tax piece. Like you all have to have dollars to be able to,
Right.
Implement the beautiful paper.
Thank you.
Thanks, Representative Meeks. Anyone online?
Me.
Okay, go ahead. I'm
I have
sorry.
one comment. I just want to note that I had a similar concern to what Representative Corbett was saying about as we go forward and develop policy recommendations, that one that I would caution against is having pharmacists handle it or having it behind the counter, because I think that for something that is explicitly not FDA approved for any medical indication, to give a product the sort of legitimacy or imprimatur of health by having a pharmacist handle it, first of all, introduces the pharmacist to, I think, an incredible amount of liability. And second, again, it gives this sort of sheen of legitimacy and safety to a product that has not been fully tested for any medical indication. So I would probably encourage us to move away from that as part of our policy recommendation. One example I'll give, just so you know there's a real life application, is when CVS started partnering with Aetna and having more of like a health hub focus on its business, they deliberately decided to stop selling cigarettes behind the counter at CVS for exactly that reason, is that they could not purport to be a health hub and providing care for patients while also selling a highly addictive product.
Yeah, I would actually add to that. So Australia, I had mentioned, they sell the vapes behind the counter for smoking cessation. They had the nicotine pouches behind the counter. But recently, over the last year, they started to see kind of the same thing we're seeing in the Kratom market, this diversification of products and like not having them properly tested. What they said was then it wasn't in it. So they've removed those from the pharmacy counter just 2 weeks ago because of that. And also because of the videos of youth using these nicotine pouches on social media. And we see a lot of that with Kratom and these other emerging drugs too.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Ms. Coughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate y'all's time.
Okay, well, last person for this area of policy, advocacy, and industry perspective, Hillary Teslek. She's Executive Director of End Kratom Addiction nonprofit organization. I believe she is online. She was. Did she have to roll off? Okay. If she's still not there, we'll go ahead and go to Amber Young.
Good morning, Chairman Townsend, members of the committee, and everyone who has taken their time to be here today. My name is Amber Young. I'm grateful for this opportunity to speak with everyone today about something that is very personal to me. Not only as someone that's been in recovery, but for someone that helps other addicts now. So I earned my bachelor's degree right here at this college in psychology, and then I earned my master's degree with LSU just this May in social work. I've worked in residential and outpatient treatment as well as for drug court now. I work for Camden County Drug Court. Perhaps mostly important, I graduated from that program. And that program saved my life. Otherwise, I would have had felonies that followed me around for the rest of my life and limited my potential. And I know what it looks like firsthand when someone's given the opportunity to change their life. And I believe that we do have the opportunity here today to give young people that same opportunity before they need a drug court program, before they need treatment, and before addiction becomes a part of their life and determines the direction of the rest of their life. So before I was a social worker and before I started working in addiction treatment, I was a person in recovery, just trying to get by. And I lived with chronic pain and chronic headaches. And that is where Kratom did enter my life. In the beginning, I only used it, you know, from time to time for headaches. But eventually it did turn into using it more often, right? I worked at a vape shop in Camden County where I was responsible for ordering and stocking both like Delta 8 products, Kratom, and all that stuff. So I educated myself on it. I did a lot of research. I knew what it was. I knew what the risks were. But because I lived in chronic pain, I ended up taking the risk and I used it. And after some time, it did become like a daily. I ended up using it daily. And I had the awareness and I knew what was going on and I was able to quit. So I had a lot of support, and I had a lot of knowledge and I had a lot of awareness and I was able to taper myself off. At that time, my partner, he was not able to do that. And I believe he's still using 7-OH products today. His use turned into lying and, I mean, like a full-blown addiction. And it put a lot of strain on our marriage and we are going through a divorce right now. But I was able to stop with no withdrawal or anything. I tapered myself off and it wasn't bad. But I think about people that don't have support, that weren't, you know, working for some goals. I had a lot ahead of me and I knew that. And so I had a lot of motivation to change. And so I did. But, you know, for people that are living in isolation, have severe mental health problems and no support, I don't know that they would be able to do the same. Because it wasn't easy to stop. I did have the obsessive thoughts about it. I did have some difficulty tapering off of it. Some days I was successful and some days I was not. But I just got back up and I tried again the next day. But it's not an easy thing to try to quit. So it's not just an issue of willpower, right? Like for me, I had already been through addiction and went through substance abuse and alcoholism. So those pathways were already in my brain, and they were just reactivated by the substance. I was able to get access to healthcare, and that was part of what helped me stop, because I could address my underlying health concerns and get properly medicated and not continue to self-medicate. But a lot of people don't have that access. I don't know if y'all have ever tried to get somebody on Medicaid, but it is almost impossible in this state unless you're a pregnant woman. It is very difficult. I walked in as a case manager with a man who couldn't walk. He was in a wheelchair and needed surgery and he could not get it. So healthcare is a big issue in this state. And, you know, for people that don't have that access to healthcare to treat their pain, this is something that they may turn to and it helps. It really does help with pain. And as we've talked about the traditional Kratom and the 7-OH, they're not the same. I have taken both products. I took the 7-OH like once and was like, this is insane, that I can get this at a gas station. Well, I got it at a wholesale place. It was brand new. I'd never seen it before. And I just grabbed the package of it. You know, I was always looking for different stuff for the store. And it was strong. It was nothing like taking the regular little capsules or anything like that. It was like taking stronger than a Percocet, probably like an Oxycontin, because it is like 17 times more potent than morphine. So then we have to stop when we need to think about the kids, right? Like their brains are still developing. They don't have judgment or impulse control. They don't know how to think about their future. But they also go through pain. They have trauma and stress and peer influence, right? But we don't have decades of research on what this does to adolescents. And so I think that it is really important that we look at the packaging. You can get it in gummies, drinks, chocolate bars. It is so appeasing to kids. And yes, you do have to be 21 or older to buy it, but that doesn't stop kids from getting vapes. It doesn't stop any of it. But to make it look that appeasing, it should not. Kratom tastes like crap. It tastes awful. And if you left it like that, kids probably wouldn't want to use it. It is disgusting. So we need to look at, the environment, the entire environment around these products, the packaging, the labeling, how accessible they are, whether or not people are actually putting it behind the counter like they're supposed to, because I think that's already put in place. And many of these that have been tested, they don't have the amounts of the product that they say is in it. So you have no idea really what you're taking with a lot of these things. So I don't think that we need to wait for a generation of young people to struggle with this addiction before addressing it. So we already have the 21 or older requirement, but those age restrictions don't eliminate youth exposure. They share them. There's online access to it, and many of them are very easy to get. You say, yes, I'm 21 or older, and some of them don't even have any verification. Some might, but most of the Delta 8, all that stuff, where I first purchased it was online. I found out about it on the internet, and I was like, wow, we should get this at the store. So kids could easily get it online. They've already talked a lot about the independent laboratory testing, clear disclosure of the concentrated or added 7-OH, and that, consider a maximum allowable concentrations of that. And the packaging and the marketing, I think it's been talked about a lot today. I don't want to wear that out, but I think that is extremely important. So, but not every Kratom product is identical. And in this process too, we can't forget about the people that are already using it. What happens if access is restricted? Like we've seen before, whenever OxyContin was taken off the market, people went to the streets. It became even more unsafe. So we need to think about, treatment, tapering options, healthcare education, and, like they've talked about, buprenorphine treatment. I don't think a lot of people even know that works for Kratom. So that is all extremely important. So I also think that we need to look at why people are turning to this in the first place. I was one of those people. I was in pain. I was trying to finish college. I was trying to function. I was just trying to get through it. And I thought I found something that worked, and it did for the time being. But whenever we're in enough pain, we don't think clearly. We may be more likely to take those risks and use the product, even knowing that it could be dangerous. But we know that education alone is not enough. The DARE program, it was not very successful. So I think we also need to address, the pain of people, the trauma that they've been through, mental health concerns, isolation, untreated medical conditions. And it's extremely important for young people who are facing poverty, family instability, trauma, or other adverse experiences, because generally this is when addiction happens. Many of us start using at a very young age, and it goes into full-blown addiction. I would say 90% of the people I work with, they started using in their teens. And so this is where we really do need to place that focus on, is getting this away, from the teenagers. So I don't think we need to ban everything. There is a middle ground that we could find, because I mean, a lot of people do use this and don't have access to what they need. But we can protect consumers, we can protect children, and we can demand honest labeling, and we can demand, independent testing. Examine the maximum concentrations that are allowed, the packaging and the marketing. The market's changing, the products are changing. And I know just like with the Delta 8, they ban one and then they just create a new formulation. And, like they said, there's tons of alkaloids in the plant. You ban one, they're going to come up with another. They're going to find a loophole in whatever law is created. So the only way is to get ahead of that. And I don't know the answer to that, but, they're pretty good at finding those loopholes and working their way around it. So just banning the product, just 7-OH, I think that they'll have other ones that will follow suit. So, making sure that the labels are clear and they don't look like candy. Because I promise you, nobody gonna want to eat Kratom tasting the way that it does. It's terrible. But we don't need to react out of fear, right? We need to follow the evidence, listen to people who have been through addiction, demand transparency from these companies, and address the concentrated products, and put our kids at the middle of this conversation, educate them about the risks. My children are very educated about addiction. They could probably stand up here and give you a speech on it, because I don't want them to go through the same thing that I did. So, that type of education and people knowing what the real risks are involved. Recently, there was a woman that was hospitalized in a coma because of a heart condition that the 7-OH caused. The concentrated things are extremely dangerous. So I think that we do need some prevention, education, regulation, treatment access for people. And I was fortunate enough to get a second chance. And I think that our kids should have a second chance, or a first chance, right, to live a life where they don't get addicted when they're a teenager. Because it'll start with Kratom and then it will go further. That's just how addiction works. It's progressive. So life doesn't always give you a second chance, so take the first one. And that's it.
Thank you. Questions from the panel? Representatives. Representative Corbett.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your testimony. You said you was on the natural leaf. You only took the 7-OH one time.
Yes.
And you was able to quit on your own on the natural leaf. You didn't have the withdrawals like the 7-OH. People are hooked on that.
No, I did not.
Is that typical in your experience working with addicts, the ones that's on natural leaf versus the 7-OH?
I personally, I knew not to take, really high amounts of it. That's going to lead to addiction for sure. So I was careful in how much I would take. And then when I tapered, I made myself a 2-week plan on, take one less pill a day or something like that. The problem with addiction is that most of us, we end up having those obsessive compulsive thoughts, and it makes it difficult to do that because we'll rationalize taking more. And then, at the end of the day, you feel terrible, shameful about it that you couldn't stop, or you couldn't, follow the plan. And a lot of people will give up, right? Addiction, it's insanity. But I think that most people that experience severe withdrawal from it, they take high amounts of the product, and unsafe amounts.
Thank you. Other questions? Representative Meeks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here today and your testimony and your work with others that have been addicted or that are addicted. But just as a education for us, whenever you first chose to start Kratom, was it, okay, I saw it on the shelf and I decided to try it? Or was that through conversation that you had heard from someone else that, okay, this may help treat X, Y, or Z? What was your first interaction with Kratom?
Well, I worked in a vape shop, so I had a lot of interactions with customers that used it. I did have customers that used it to get off of heroin. I had a few of those and they were, successful at staying off of heroin. So it does help with some harm reduction for people. I had a lady that would come in and she would get it and she'd put it in her coffee in the morning. I had other people that did use it for chronic pain. And one day I was at work and I had an excruciating headache and I was at the point where I couldn't take it anymore. And I decided to try some and it helped.
Thank you. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Other questions? Online? Thank you for your testimony, willing to come in, Amber. We appreciate it. Please tell Judge Kelly thanks for all his work as well. She works with Judge Kelly, and he's probably one of the first judges that actually started testing for Kratom through the drug court. And he's a good citizen, community member of the Golan Isles for sure. So thank you. Representative Al, we're going to have one more before Emery comes on, if that's okay. Al, I apologize. We have Hillary back. Hillary, we've got a few minutes and we have to get to another presentation after that. Thanks for joining back us again. We're sorry we lost you earlier.
Of course. No worries.
I'll let you go ahead.
Thank you so much. Chairman Townsend and members of the committee, thank you. My name is Hillary Tusluck. I am the Executive Director for End Kratom Addiction and former VP co-founder of Quitting Kratom Support. Real quick, I just want to clear up. Mr. Haddow had mentioned that we receive funding from addiction treatment centers. That is not true. We have been largely self-funded. We did receive a donation from Antidote Health Partners, which is not a network of inpatient treatment centers. And we also have other donors as well. So we are a 501c3. All donations feed directly back into our nonprofit to help sustain our efforts. So with that being said, I have spent several years in the nonprofit sector serving those who have suffered from, lost a loved one, or experienced injury due to natural leaf addiction. I'm here today as both an advocate and a Kratom addict in long-term recovery. And with that being said, I'd like to share my story briefly as it represents what tens of thousands of individuals have gone through. I began taking natural Kratom leaf in 2017 when I was 21 years old. I was coping with daily anxiety. I wanted to get off my prescription medication. So when a friend handed me a bag of natural Kratom powder capsules, he described it as an herbal legal supplement available at Wild Bill's Tobacco down the street. And so of course I just had to try it. Since little information was displayed on the bag, my friend suggested a serving size of 4 capsules, which is a low 2-gram dose. I took that first dose and felt great. My anxiety vanished, replaced by an upbeat, talkative energy. I started taking it regularly, assuming that a natural supplement carried minimal risks. But over time, tolerance set in. Within 3 years, I went from taking 4 capsules occasionally to consuming 100 capsules per day, spread across 5 doses of 20 capsules each. It sounds impossible, but it was all I consumed. My life revolved around natural Kratom leaf 24/7, securing money, timing smoke shop hours, and planning lunch breaks to do my doses. Every morning I woke up dope sick. I lost 45 pounds, my eyes could not focus, my hair fell out, and my heart palpitated constantly. Wasting away, I became so physically weak that I had to search online for shower chairs because I could not hold my arms up long enough to wash my own hair. Basic tasks were nearly impossible at the age of 23. Desperate for help, I sought out other people who also suffered from this supplement addiction. I searched until I found a community, stopped taking natural Kratom powder, and endured the 90 days of horrific withdrawal it took for my body and brain to heal. Eventually, I co-founded Quitting Kratom Support. This recovery network grew to 15,000 members, allowing me to engage with thousands of people suffering from natural leaf kratom addiction. Today, working for End Kratom Addiction, I use my unique experience and knowledge to educate the public on the risks of not just extracts, not just 7 known its derivatives, but natural leaf kratom. And so let's look at the deceptive commercial reality that is driving this youth exposure. A primary driver is that natural kratom leaf is often marketed as a safe holistic supplement. Routinely compared to coffee or tea in retail spaces and on social media, natural kratom powder leads unassuming customers to unwittingly fall into a physical opioid-like dependency. Member experiences from Quitting Kratom Support reveal how effectively this wellness trap hooks individuals with no prior substance abuse history, and the identifying details have been changed for privacy. These are not transcripts, they are summaries of how people became addicted to natural kratom powder. A man named Ronald discovered kratom shots after a fitness influencer promoted them online as a healthy, energy-boosting alcohol alternative. Cassidy, a school teacher, was introduced to capsules by colleagues who recommended them as a routine dietary supplement. And Antonio was a student working towards his master's degree. Antonio had no prior history of drug use, tried natural kratom as a casual purchase simply because the cashier offered a sample to him for free. This legal over-the-counter availability creates a false sense of safety. To a teenager, flavored drink mixes or capsules do not look like drugs. They look like fitness supplements. By the time they discover that natural kratom leaf carries a real risk of physical dependence and agonizing protracted withdrawal, they are already trapped. This false sense of safety can have lethal consequences. Nowhere is this clearer than in Georgia, which consistently ranks among the highest in the nation for kratom detections and fatal overdose autopsies, accounting for roughly 1 in 8 of all such cases reported nationwide. Furthermore, the Georgia Poison Center Control has recorded 543 exposure calls since 2021. Most alarmingly, accidental exposures among children aged 5 and younger skyrocketed by 400% from 2024 to 2025, and 76% of all recorded Georgia exposures in 2025 required emergency hospital management. And behind these numbers are real Georgia families from the Quitting Kratom Support community. Again, details change for privacy. George from Atlanta is a veteran with 12 years of continuous sobriety in Alcoholics Anonymous. George relapsed after a local kava bar staff assured him that kratom was a healthy coffee relative. He fought his way back to sobriety, this time from natural kratom, having recently collected a 1-year kratom recovery coin. Tyrell from Albany was a father whose daughter fell into a severe debilitating addiction. He joined Quitting Kratom Support, seeking tapering schedules to save his child from her natural leaf addiction. Joaquin from Johns Creek is a father who turned to 100 grams of natural kratom powder daily to numb the excruciating grief of losing his house and his daughter. And Joaquin recently achieved 289 days sober at this time. This Georgia contingent is so active and tightly knit that they have successfully established in-person, face-to-face kratom recovery meetings to support local members offline. And what we're seeing locally is a reflection of the nationwide kratom addiction crisis. Just this past March, the CDC released a report showing that poison center calls involving natural kratom spiked by 1,200% between 2015 and 2025. The numbers for teenagers and young adults aged 12 to 19 are alarming. Kratom-only exposures jumped by 439%. Multi-substance exposures surged by 783%, and overall youth exposure rates climbed by 624%. This is not an isolated data set. A study published this year in the journal Addiction by Comstock and colleagues evaluated nearly 9,000 national exposures, and what they found is crucial for this committee to hear. Nationwide, 13% of all reported kratom exposures resulted in severe life-threatening outcomes or death, including 8.7% of kratom-only cases and 13% of polysubstance cases. More than a third, 34% of all cases required hospitalization, and of those admitted, 44.5% ended up in the intensive care unit. Even among individuals who consumed kratom entirely on its own with no other substance involved, 10.3% were admitted directly to intensive care. Critically, the researchers found no statistically significant difference in exposure rates, hospitalizations, or clinical severity between states with zero regulations and states that have enacted the Kratom Consumer Protection Act. Simply put, light touch measures like basic labeling and age limits failed to reduce these harmful public health encounters. The only states that saw statistically significant reductions in both exposures and hospitalizations were with those with complete kratom prohibitions. And finally, when we look at the youngest and most vulnerable, the National Poison Data System recorded 490 exposures in children aged 12 and under between 2015 and 2025. A third of them required formal emergency medical evaluation, and 11 were admitted to the ICU, including a 2-day-old newborn suffering neonatal opioid withdrawal tremors and a 22-month-old toddler with severe central nervous system depression, alongside 2 documented adolescent deaths. As Georgia state policy is evaluated, we must recognize that while Georgia's House Bill 181, enacted January 1st of 2025, bans high-potency kratom derivatives such as 7-hydroxymetragenine, otherwise known as 7-O, natural kratom leaf remains completely legal and easily accessible. And so although natural kratom leaf is legal in Georgia, our liver enzymes metabolize kratom's primary alkaloid, metragenine, directly into 7-hydroxymetragenine, which is a mu opioid agonist shown to be up to 13 times more potent than morphine. Natural kratom leaf works as an active precursor to the very compound concentrated in high-potency banned products, carrying inherent risks of physical dependency, tolerance, and withdrawal. And so here's the thing. When we're talking about possible harms linked to kratom, we've got to be honest about the polysubstance use and pre-existing health conditions. While there are documented fatalities caused by natural kratom powder alone, a lot of the serious adverse events and death reports involve people who have taken other substances too, and conditions involving the heart, digestive system, nervous system, mental health, or substance use can also affect what happens. Since natural kratom leaf is metabolized by our liver, other common medications such as Benadryl or antidepressants can build up to toxic levels in the body that would otherwise not have occurred without the presence of kratom. This complexity makes it difficult to say kratom alone caused a specific outcome. Peer-reviewed research has raised the same concerns, pointing to factors such as multiple drug use, adulterated products, possible drug-kratom interactions, and inconsistent toxicology testing. The National Institute on Drug Abuse also says that nearly all deaths associated with kratom products involved other drugs, medications, and contaminants. And so as an advocate, I think accuracy matters. Peer-reviewed kratom research does exist, but it's incomplete, especially when it comes to long-term effects, interactions with common medications, and risk for people with underlying health conditions. The FDA has reported serious adverse events, but it also notes that an adverse event report by itself does not prove that kratom caused the events. But the fact is, we don't know enough for kratom to be available over the counter, because the addiction study confirms that standard kratom consumer protection acts fail to show a statistically significant reduction in exposures or hospitalizations compared to completely unrestricted states. Active and independent state-level surveillance is essential to measure whether regulatory frameworks are really effective in reducing harm over time, or if they make little, if any, difference. Kratom is not coffee. Coffee does not bind to mu opioid receptors. It does
Ms.
not
Tesla,
result. Yes.
If you can kind of wrap it up, or you need to
Yep.
move on to the next
I'm just
presentation.
about done. Yes. It's not coffee, results in life-threatening outcomes, and it does not produce a grueling physical withdrawal. And so members of the committee, the public health data is a siren. The rising trend of youth exposures are concerning. And I thank you for your leadership and commitment to protecting the families of Georgia. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Questions from representatives?
I have one.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you for your testimony. One thing that I want to bring up is something we hear a lot from sort of the pro-kratom advocates, that they will often point to polypharmacy or multi-substance abuse as exculpatory, saying like it wasn't kratom, it was because they were using alcohol or on fentanyl. And that certainly is a concern. Polypharmacy is something we see. But in specific, because this is a committee about youth exposure to kratom and talking about the increase in toxicology and also the Poison Center for children who are toddlers or middle school students needing to go to the ICU, it's much more of a dubious proposition to say that a toddler is practicing multi-substance abuse as opposed to getting access to the kratom, which is the subject of this committee.
Yes, I apologize for the misleading warning there. So could you repeat the question one more time? Are you asking
It wasn't
about
even
the
so much a question.
pediatric-
It was, yeah, it wasn't so much a question even as a comment on what you had noted about that it was difficult to distill kratom as the sole agent in causing some of these poor health outcomes. But I think the way that we can distill it as much as possible is the fact that this is a youth-focused committee, and it is much less likely that if a 2-year-old is rushed to the ICU for kratom
Yes.
exposure, that they're also using alcohol or that they got a hold of fentanyl or what have you.
That is correct. Yes, yes. So when it comes to those cases at at such a young age, it's usually an accidental pediatric ingestion, whether kratom was left at the house for them to consume. There are not toddlers going out and purchasing kratom. That's right.
Okay, thank you. Representative Corbett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your testimony. Just to clarify, you said you started out with 4 tablets or four pills?
4
And-
capsules of natural kratom powder.
For natural leaf. And then to achieve that same effect, you had to eventually wind up with 100 tablets per day. Is that
That's correct, sir.
to achieve the same effect?
That is correct, sir.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you, Ms. Teslak, and Dr. Al, Representative Al, we'll go to you next. Introduce your guest. Or Nick Fitzpatrick, if he's on the line, from Children's Healthcare of Atlanta.
Actually, I don't know that I was the one who found Dr. Fitzpatrick, but I'm very glad he's here to talk about youth
Well,
exposure.
you're probably,
to
that's, that's true. Dr. Al's got a lot at the next meeting. I apologize, in Athens. We're doing more on vaping in Athens. And Dr. Fitzpatrick, if you're available.
Of course, and let me see if I can share my screen. Nope, that's the wrong. Here, let's swap displays. There we go. How's that? Oh, still. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry, y'all. I was afraid this would, here we go. There we go. All right, got it. Apologies there. So, again, I am Dr. Nick Fitzpatrick. Thank you, Chairman Townsend and members of the committee for the opportunity to speak today. I'm a pediatric pulmonologist and at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, an assistant professor of pediatrics at Emory University. I'm also a Georgia native, and take care of children with serious chronic lung diseases, including kids affected by vaping-related injuries. I appreciate the committee taking up this issue, and I moving ahead to the next slide. If I can, there we go. Have no financial relationships or conflicts of interest to disclose. When I was putting together this talk, I wanted to start with what is vaping, but I realized when I was preparing that I didn't put in a kind of a primer on nicotine itself, because nicotine really is the main issue that we have to deal with vaping. So just kind of briefly, nicotine is highly addictive. It is a natural alkaloid found in tobacco plants. Small molecule crosses the blood-brain barrier very quickly within about 10 to 20 seconds of inhalation, which is part of why it is so much more quickly able to hook people compared to other forms of nicotine delivery. It binds to the nicotinic acetylcholine receptor in the brain, which is a very common neurotransmitter. When it binds, it triggers the release of dopamine in the brain's reward pathway, which is the same reward circuitry involved in other addictive substances. So again, nicotine is what makes these products addictive. It's not the flavoring or the vapor itself. Those other chemicals in the aerosol can cause the tissue damage to the lungs, but nicotine is really what drives the compulsive use, and tolerance builds quickly. So users need to get more, take a larger dose to get the same effect, and withdrawal symptoms can set in within hours of the last use. So specifically talking about vaping, so vaping is kind of goes by many different names, and kind of broadly, e-cigarette is one of the common ones. A vape pen, an electronic nicotine delivery system, or ENDS, is kind of the more technical title, but they're usually battery powered devices that heat a liquid cartridge to create a chemical filled aerosol that's inhaled. It typically contains nicotine, but can be THC or other substances as well. And these aerosol particles can reach the small airways of the lungs and be deposited there and then enter into the bloodstream. It's available in multiple forms: pre-filled or disposable devices, rechargeable devices with a refillable reservoir. And the picture attached is one of the just a sample of different vape devices. One of the things I want to really point out is that we're moving in the right direction. So in the past few years, and 2025 is the most recent data that we have from the CDC's National Youth Tobacco Survey. But tobacco use in general is declining. E-cigarette use is the largest component of youth tobacco use. And as you can see, over the past few years has almost cut in half, which I think is a tremendous success story, but not a point to kind of rest on our laurels. And there's still plenty of opportunity for making further progress there. Currently, about 5% of middle and high school students are vaping. Including, and I think this is really where the most important data lies. So almost over 4 in 10 children are vaping more than 20 days out of at least the most recent month where they were surveyed. But I think that is just kind of a general trend of more days than not each month they're vaping. That's actually a 3% increase compared to the data in 2024. And then the 2024 data actually had further data that over 26% of kids were actually even vaping daily. Unfortunately, we don't have daily data on the 2025 National Youth Tobacco Survey. Splitting up by grade, mostly high schoolers, 7% of high schoolers, but almost 3% of middle schoolers are vaping. And where we've seen the biggest trend is that disposables are now the main driver of vaping use, and there are a few top brands there. One thing I want to point out is that those percentages, 64, 21, 19, 19, those obviously don't add up to 100%, and so that shows that kids are using multiple brands and often are using multiple modalities of tobacco or nicotine use. So kind of breaking things down into 4 categories for why are youth vaping. A big one is advertising. So hopefully these images aren't too small for folks in the room to see, but these are some examples of advertisements that kids can see on social media. 7 in 10 students back in 2021. And so I suspect that number is potentially even higher now. But 7 in 10 students were seeing ads in 2021, including almost or 3 in 4 seeing those ads on social media. Another important piece of information is that the more the more content kids are seeing, whether it's ads or influencers on social media, if you aren't already vaping, the more of that content that you are being exposed to, the higher the odds that you would start vaping as a youth. The second category of flavors, again, these two advertisements, one says rainbow candy, the other says ice sweet. They're designed to drive appeal, and 9 in 10 youth are using a flavored product at this point, most commonly fruit, candy, and mint flavors. And then one other part of all of that is that because there are multiple flavors, experimenting with flavors may even increase that appeal to start or continue vaping. The social influences are big. The top reason that teens are trying vaping in the first place is because a friend used it. The top reason that teens continue using vaping is because they're feeling anxious or stressed or depressed, which may even be evidence of addictive symptoms. But I also want to point out that about a third of kids got their first vape from a friend. So nicotine itself, like I spoke about earlier, is highly addictive. And most kids who are vaping right now do want to quit. And an even higher number than that have tried and were unsuccessful, which I think speaks to just how difficult nicotine addiction is. This is probably an image that folks in the committee and elsewhere have seen. But in this photo, there are two vapes. And they're kind of hard to pick out, but there they are. They look like highlighters, but it's easy to hide your vape pen amongst your school supplies or something like that. And just generally makes enforcement more difficult as well. Vaping is not necessarily a safer alternative to cigarettes. There are multiple toxic ingredients that even in small doses can be damaging to lung tissue, some of which are carcinogenic, acetaldehyde, acrolein, and formaldehyde. Obviously, these are in small doses, but still are being absorbed in the lungs of teens who are vaping. Acrolein and diacetyl flavorings also are linked to COPD and other irreversible lung diseases. Sometimes there's even some nicotine in products that are marketed as nicotine-free. And I think importantly, the products often have a higher nicotine content than the average cigarette. So it's more difficult to control the volume of or the dose of nicotine that the child is getting. Typically, one pod may be one pack, but some of them are even higher than that as far as the number of puffs that they deliver. And there's not any strong evidence that e-cigarettes are safe and effective for helping people quit tobacco. There is a lot of times that folks are using cigarettes and vaping together. Going back to that original slide about what kids are using, the number of kids who are smoking cigarettes is pretty stable, but dual use with cigarettes and vaping or even nicotine pouches is pretty common. And then vaping is independently associated with the increased risk of future tobacco and cannabis use, in part because of the addictive properties of nicotine on young developing brains. There is this is just one example of kind of how nicotine can be a problem for the lungs in a way that's maybe invisible to normal common lung function testing. So this was a recent study where 20 e-cigarette users in their early 20s had never smoked cigarettes before, And so, only vaping allows us to kind of take a look at, okay, here are the effects of vaping specifically, instead of tobacco products kind of contributing as well. So all the participants who were enrolled in the study had normal spirometry. Spirometry is a common method that we use for lung function testing. I use it in my patients all the time. And all the participants had normal lung function by spirometry, but when they were tested to see how their exercise capacity was, they showed a statistically significant difference in their exercise capacity being lower than the participants who had never used e-cigarettes before. Something else is that, and this goes back to kind of nicotine's effects on, for instance, the blood vessels. By constricting blood vessels, it decreases the pulmonary vascular response, which decreases blood flow to the lungs and can cause some growth and development problems in the lung tissue itself and in growing lungs, but also can impact the ability for blood flow to increase, for instance, during exercise. So I think that contributes to why there's a decrease in exercise capacity. And then lastly, this third box shows an increase in breathlessness or difficulty breathing during exertion that is significantly higher than someone who is not using e-cigarettes. And again, I think nicotine is a big factor in why that is, decreasing the or vasoconstricting and decreasing blood flow to the lungs. One thing that the authors noted was that the degree of damage that they're seeing is occurring much sooner than what they would typically see in cigarette smokers. I think this is more so me speaking, but I think more so because of the difficulty in controlling the amount of nicotine. Suspect that kids who are vaping are getting a higher nicotine dose compared to if they were smoking cigarettes instead. And then lastly, the lungs, because the lungs aren't fully matured until you get to be in your mid-20s, that early exposure, especially in middle school and high schoolers, is likely to impair lung growth itself, not just the damage that the toxins in vaping cause to the lung tissue, in a way that because of the potentially higher nicotine exposure would be more than what we would see with cigarettes. So a little bit more on kind of lung development and the developing child itself. So they're kind of breaking it down into two different categories. There's direct exposure to the nicotine and the other components in vaping. Because it's highly addictive, that effect on a developing brain is going to be compounded. So we see that nicotine can lead to disruptions in learning and memory and attention circuits that can be long-term symptoms or effects like behavioral effects and ADHD-like symptoms can have been seen in observational data. And that's independent of the lungs themselves. So the lungs, the irritation and damage to the lungs can cause problems with bronchitis or worsening asthma exacerbations. If you have asthma, there's potentially an increased likelihood of developing asthma as well as a result of the toxins and the nicotine in the developing lung, increasing the lungs' reactivity to irritants in the air. And then even though secondhand exposure is less than what we would see with typical tobacco products, it doesn't mean that there aren't any at all. The emissions still contain nicotine and a lot of the other things that we see in the vapor that's being inhaled, and that can still be absorbed from secondhand vapor. It happens at much lower levels than compared to tobacco smoke. For instance, the one study saw about an 80 some odd percent decrease in the amount of of nicotine that was absorbed in secondhand vapor compared to secondhand smoke. But when they measured the levels of a kind of a byproduct of nicotine in the blood, they found that those levels were 5 times higher in secondhand vape exposed children compared to non-exposed children. And we also know that the children of parents who smoke and vape show learning difficulties and slower growth and shorter stature compared to their peers. Again, I think pointing to nicotine's effects on the developing brain there in small quantities over a longer period of time. Because nicotine is a psychoactive molecule, vaping, whether it's nicotine or THC for that matter, can have effects on mood, depression, anxiety, and suicidality in adolescents. The most common reason, like I said earlier, that kids are vaping is because they're feeling anxious, stressed, and depressed. So nicotine may feel like a self-medication to them, but in actuality, it's worsening the underlying problem, contributing to addiction and tolerance of nicotine. Again, higher levels of nicotine in vape products compared to cigarettes, and similarly, higher THC concentrations can be found in THC vape products. And so, we're going to be seeing amplified risks compared to smoking or ingesting nicotine because of those higher levels. Usually, well, not usually, but a lot of times vaping is combined with other substances. And so that can lead to worsening of symptoms of major depressive disorder, general anxiety disorder, and other mental health difficulties. And the withdrawal, as we know, is can be pretty difficult. The percentage of kids who want to quit but can't is a higher number than what I would like to see, especially because the number of people who've tried and have been unsuccessful is even higher than that. In addition to, and some of the speakers earlier talked about some of these same things with kratom, accidental ingestions are a big problem with e-liquids and vape products. So more than 80% of poison control calls involving e-cigarettes were for ingestions for children under 5, either actually ingesting it or being exposed to the liquid in a way that can be harmful to the child, even if they're not the ones vaping themselves. The bottles themselves are often bright and appealing colors, as you saw in some of the ads earlier, which makes it easy for kids to want to get into them if they're left within reach. We do see severe outcomes from exposures happening, including if in a large enough amount, death is a possibility. The signs of toxicity are broad: palpitations and tremors, difficulty concentrating. Seizures have been reported in kids more so than adults with nicotine toxicity. And then even the packages themselves, the device malfunction, if a battery were to break down, for instance, a lithium ion battery, we see times where a battery in a phone or something has exploded. Well, that can happen in a vape pen as well, and damage from that can be really dangerous. And there's even been cases reported of permanent vision loss from that getting into the eyes. We can kind of skip ahead. I did want to touch very briefly on E-Valley, e-cigarette or vaping associated lung injury is something that we were seeing a lot more, in 2019 and 2020, related to an additive that was in certain vape liquids causing severe lung injury to children. We're not really seeing those cases anymore. And it may be that that those cases aren't happening anymore, but we're also not tracking those cases anymore. I just kind of briefly polled some of my colleagues to see if anyone had seen any cases more recently, and at least in our group, the ones that I talked to had not, but do report some similar E-Valley-like illnesses that are related to, say, for instance, kind of an allergic reaction. So we're just not checking, so we don't necessarily know if if E-Valley has gone away or is just kind of flying under the radar. The reason I bring this up is because the vitamin E acetate that was in the vape liquid, that was kind of coming from more of an illicit market that remains. And even if E-Valley from vitamin E acetate is no longer happening because that's been removed from products, some other additive could be added in without any regulation to lead to some other serious illness or injury to children in the future. I did also want to touch very briefly on nicotine pouches themselves. So the small spit-free pouches are increasingly popular. We've seen a 4 times increase in the last few years in use. Greater than 1 in 4 of those, greater than 1 in 4 children who are using nicotine pouches are using them for more than 20 days in a month, and over 90% of them are using flavored pouches. The reason that well, actually, we've kind of talked about it already as far as the effects of nicotine on the brain, but those effects are there because of the nicotine in the pouches, even if they're not necessarily ingesting the toxins in vapes. And then even though it may be perceived as lower risk, because it's a nicotine product, it's not necessarily lower risk because nicotine is the main driver in a lot of the risk and harm coming from e-cigarettes and vapes. So just kind of to close, I again am encouraged by the overall downward trend that we're seeing in e-cigarette use, but there's still a lot to be done. The adapting market where we're seeing more of the disposable vapes instead of the refillable ones, and nicotine pouches are increasingly popular. Those are kind of avenues for us to address the difficulties with vaping. It's not a favorable alternative to tobacco. It has its own risks. Tobacco-free is not safe, does not necessarily mean safe. And it's more than just the lungs themselves. So because nicotine can cause, changes in cardiovascular health and blood pressure, as well as, like we were talking about earlier, the lung injury that may even outpace cigarettes, both from the nicotine and from the aerosol itself. Quitting is difficult, so preventing the first use and exposure in the first place is our most high yield opportunity for intervention. And anything that reduces youth acquisition and exposure of nicotine products is in the direct interest of Georgia's children. Thank you again for your time and attention to this issue, and I'm glad to take any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Fitzpatrick. Appreciate that. And you're kind of a launching point for our next meeting. We're going into vaping. I know it's been a problem. It's getting better. I've talked to quite a few schools in our local school system. I heard the numbers are going down as well, from what I understand. Still high, but I think still going down. They did start a vaping system that we may talk about later. That seems pretty effective for them. What they did, an anti-vaping system inside the bathrooms. And so we may try to get to that as well, to kind of help others out. But do we have any questions from the rest of the committee? We do, but Representative Corbett?
Not necessarily a question, but a comment on the vaping pen that looked like a Marks a lot. Where are those actually manufactured? That in the United States, somebody's manufacturing those, or they're imported, or that was, I mean, that's hard to police, for teachers in schools or whoever to actually catch that.
Yeah, I don't know where those are coming from. I suspect that that it's not something that you could just go into a convenience store and buy. I feel like that has to be something that would come online from someplace that's not as well regulated. But I don't know for certain.
Thank you. Yeah. Other questions? Anybody online? Okay. Well, Dr. Fitzpatrick, thanks again for your help, and we'll try to keep in touch, and anything we can do that you can see, please let us know.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next, just to remind the committee members, we got a public testimony yet. I don't think anybody signed up, but we've got a few people here, so we want to hear them. We're doing good on time. If we go a little bit over, I'm staying. So if you have to go, understand. I do have lunches for the staff, representatives, and police officers, and probably anybody out of town. We'll see. But let the staff and police officers grab a box first. We do have box lunches that I believe Leslie and Deborah have everything together. So if we can just start over here on this side of the room first. If you're here to speak, please step up to the podium. Let us know your name, where you're from, and tell us your story, please. And thank you for being here. Hold on one second. I understand. Thank you for being here.
I'm Jim Gravidoni. You could buy that vape, sir, on Amazon. Yes, an American company, but it's made in China. Just want to briefly state, I am an recovered alcoholic. What I learned through Alcoholics Anonymous, that is a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. But right now I use crushed leaf kratom, not the powder, the actual crushed leaf. I make a tea with it on a daily basis. I use it for chronic pain. Works very well. Never got up to the amount that that girl was taking. That is called no self-control. There has to be a point where you say, where is the parent responsible? Seeing we're parents of 6 children, one which we did deal with, the opioid problem, crisis. That child today can come down to dad's house in Georgia, have a cup of kratom tea with me, and never touch it again for 6 months. I can drive down here from Rome, Georgia, and not have a glass of tea. I'm in pain right now. I have some with me. Yeah, I'll make it when I go to the hotel in Savannah because my bride has never seen Savannah. But yeah, we traveled here today.
Thank you.
Like a lot of people say, there's a lot of good people out there. There's people your age in our establishment. We own a botanical bar. We have people coming in from the ages of 76 to 21. The minute this committee changed the law to 21, it went on our door the next week. We will comply. Now, when did I have my first drink? I was 12 years old. Who has a family that had a bar in the basement? Raise your hand. Did you guys have a bar in the basement as a child? Yes or no?
We had a wine cellar.
Okay. So you had wine. Okay. Did you ever take some of dad's wine? That's how it happens. That's how it happens. And it also happened at a convenience store where I grew up in Dearborn, Michigan. As you can see, I'm not as tall as a guy that was 6'4". But the guy couldn't tell I was only 15 buying beer, buying wine. You got to make the store owners responsible. Yeah, maybe it's through a registry. I go to the stores in Rome. I see kids walk out with vapes. I see young children. I'm saying children because they're younger than my kids. 16, 17-year-olds walking out with beer. I can tell they're 16 or 17. Why? They're not truly born American business owners. I don't know what to say. I'm not being politically incorrect by calling the kettle black, am I? You got to make them responsible. We also own the vape shop next door. We do not carry any Kratom products in our vape shop. But in the botanical bar, we serve tea that meets all Georgia, below Georgia standards. So there is safe Kratom. There's no really, I'm ex-smoker, went to becoming a vapor. We needed the extra space to expand a game room. But the thing is, you're all welcome to come up and see what a real good American-run establishment's like, where everybody that looks under my age will get ID'd. Thank you.
1 second, in case we have questions.
Any questions?
Representatives?
Oh, by the
Fine.
way, where we do get our product from, really quick, we receive a COA from the wholesaler that she had done here when it comes into America. She gets a COA before it leaves Indonesia. She has it tested. It's a female. And then we have to test each and every shipment that we receive, because it'll have a batch number and the date it was received, so it can align up. We didn't bring our COAs this time because we didn't get a chance to speak last time. We did have them there. Mitragenia specia was on average, I think, 14% in a 24-ounce drink. 7-OH or hydroxy 7, whatever you want to call it, 7-O was non-detected when it's brewed into a tea. Just saying, paperwork sitting in Rome, come on up and see us. I came to see you.
Thank you. And I believe your wife's testified before, haven't you? Yeah, I appreciate you being here.
I testified with Angie from Kavamama. I think it was in 2023.
Okay.
And by the way, I told your committee in 2023, please ban 7-O.
Thank you. Okay, now the middle section. Anyone in the middle section would like to testify? And yes, sir. Come on over, please. If we can adjust the microphone. How about coming up here so you can use one of ours? That. Thanks. Thank you for being here. Get your name and where you're from.
Hello. Hello, my name is Christian Warren. I'm 22 years old from Savannah. I'm here today because this is a topic that I'm very passionate about. I have a statement that I would like to read to you all. You'd pull it up here. 1 second. There we go. All right. I was born with several very severe physical birth defects, including spina bifida, myelomeningocele, and Chiari malformation, which causes severe chronic migraines, amongst other things. The most severe birth defect I have is called cloacal exstrophy, which basically means I was born with my bladder and large intestine on the outside of my body, and my pelvis was split into 2 halves. It is quite frankly miraculous that I am alive today at 22 years old. I am wheelchair bound and experience severe chronic pain every day. When I was around 16, I was completely lost. The pain was absolutely debilitating. I was tired of potentially addictive pharmaceuticals that never ended up actually working. I discovered Kratom, and it completely changed my life. I finally found a natural pain reliever, which still allowed me to function and live my life to the fullest extent that I can. Kratom has been nothing short of a lifesaver for me personally. I now have 2 jobs and I'm doing what I love. I have a wonderful girlfriend, and despite my challenges, I'm eternally grateful for my life. Kratom has given me the ability to function as a productive human being and member of society. While I still experience chronic pain on a daily basis, it is definitely manageable with the help of Kratom. Of course, everything should be used in moderation. Kratom is simply a tool. Like any tool, it must be respected. It must be used with care and intention. It would be devastating if Kratom was banned here, as it has helped me in ways words couldn't possibly convey. I cannot possibly stress this enough. 7-0 is in no way comparable to raw, pure Kratom from legitimate sources. 7-0 may be a far more potent synthetic compound of mitragynine, Kratom, but in no way are they the same. 7-0 products from untrustworthy sources are undeniably harmful and, in my opinion, should be regulated or scheduled. Kratom has and continues to help countless people in amazing ways and needs to remain available to those in positions like mine. Thank you for your time and attention.
Good. Well, questions from the committee? Online? Well, I'll ask you a question. Thank you for testifying, telling your story, and appreciate what you're doing. And how did you find that when you first started Kratom? The reason I'm saying this reminds me of somebody in Southeast Georgia I talked to on the phone a few times. How'd you kind of first come to your deciding with the pure leaf and how you kind of mix it and things like that? Do you mix with anything else, or is it just a pure leaf? And how much do you give yourself in the pain that, I know it's different because everybody has different levels of pain.
Absolutely.
So it's different for you than it would be for me or for somebody else.
Right.
Kind of how did that process go?
Well, I take pure leaf capsules. I take 4 to 5 grams a day, depending, twice a day. That is 5 grams the whole day.
Just a pure leaf, yeah.
Yeah. I discovered it online around 2019, 2020. I've been prescribed countless pharmaceuticals and nothing ever worked. I was having severe health problems with it. I've been taking Kratom for 6 years and I haven't had any health problems from it whatsoever. All of my scans are clean. I'm as healthy as I possibly can be. Never tried 7-0. I will not ever try 7-0. I've done as much research on this topic as I possibly can. But I think from my perspective, Kratom, pure Kratom from legitimate and trustworthy sources should remain available, possibly regulated, to ensure that it comes from trustworthy sources and that it doesn't fall into the hands of those who aren't using it for its beneficial purposes. That's about it. But I appreciate all of you for giving me the time to speak today. It is very much appreciated. And I look forward to following this closely. So
please do, and thank you for your input and being here. It took a lot to get here. I know. You're always welcome. So thank you,
sir. Thank you.
Okay, now if we can go to closed comments from any of the committee members first. Jordan Ruthen, we'll start with you and come on down.
Thank you everyone for being here today. I appreciate all the testimony on both sides. I look forward to seeing everybody next month in Athens.
We appreciate all the testimony and thank you so much for being here. And like I said, we need to get some good answers to this. Thank you.
just reiterate what they said, a good meeting, a lot of information to take in, and look forward to the next meeting.
Thank you, representatives. And Representative Al?
Nothing to add. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
I just want to say thank you. I appreciate it very much. Next meeting will be in Athens, Georgia. I believe it's the 25th. It's on a Friday, 9 to 1. Again, that'll be twofold. That'll be partial vaping, partial Mike Norton on that. For that, they've done a lot of research. University of Georgia, the pharmacy school there. And then the last meeting will be in Bremen, Georgia. I believe October 9th. It's also a Friday. And that'll be more at the Waco campus at West Georgia Tech. That'll be more focused on enforcement. Well, by then, hopefully we'll have some possibilities. If we decide to go the regulation route, hearing from DOR, possibly ag. If not, we'll just have to hear from them later. But hopefully we can get reports from them, and that'll be enforcement. And also looking at what they mentioned before, we talked about, I think, brief at the first meeting, testing for kratom at the autopsy stage 2 on any kind of overdose screenings. Kind of look at that as well if we can. So anyway, I appreciate everybody being here. Thank you very much, and please safe travels. Nice, and we got 20 boxes of lunch. Please let the representatives, officers, staff, I want those, please.
Oh my God, that was horrible. The audio was horrible at the end. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I don't know if, I mean, it might be, my laptop is literally at 7% right now. I just looked up and I'm like, oh my God. I don't know. I think the charger I have is just messed up. The cable or something. I don't know. My whole life is falling apart.
Yeah,
that
Heidi, we'll have to rewatch it to get that kid's name. Well, not kid, the 22-year-old. We'll have to rewatch it to get his name. And then the first guy that testified, the gym guy, he follows me on X.
That dude said, come out and see me. I came out to see you.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, wait.
So here in a little bit, or later on today, we will be streaming the Montana hearing that happened on Tuesday. So you guys need to come back and watch that.
I'm just making sure. I did it. Am I
Yeah, a little
glitching
bit.
out?
Yep.
Okay. I can't get the freaking thing off of the thing.
What? There's nothing on there.
It's like the... Uh-oh. It's saying my page is unresponsive.
Oh, it's done that before. Right now, it's just showing you. There's no shared screen.
Okay. It's saying restream's unresponsive.
Yeah, that's happened a couple times before. But yeah, so you guys, I don't know what time we're gonna go live later, but we're gonna show the Montana hearing, so you definitely need to come. Just hit the notification bell or whatever, and it'll alert you whenever we go live. But we got to show y'all Montana.
And sorry if you're making comments right now. My restream is completely frozen, so I can't put them up on the screen. Dude, you'll have to end the stream.
Okay. Well, so Heidi says I want to adopt him.
I know. I'm so glad he was there. I'm glad that at least 2 people got to speak.
He was so calm, cool, and collected. He was so eloquent.
Yes.
But yeah, okay.
Okay, I'm getting like warnings.
All right.
I'm getting like, all right. Bye, everybody.